A few days after we moved into our new house, the doorbell rang loudly. I opened the door, and it swung open quickly. "Why haven't you invited us over after moving into your new house?" My mother-in-law was standing there. Behind her, my husband Daniel was pushing me inside. I was surprised, but more so because my mother-in-law walked right in without asking. "It's a nice house with a garden." "Surprising, since you're not great at keeping things tidy, but I guess you've done okay." "Where's my room?" "This one gets a lot of sunlight." I had to hold back a laugh at how cheerful and carefree she was. I thought, we're not that close. "You don't get a room here, asterisk." "What? You can't say things like that to family. If you apologize now, I'll forgive you. Otherwise, I'll divorce you." Daniel yelled at me, his face red, and my mother-in-law agreed, smiling nastily. It was ridiculous. I knew it was just an empty threat. I sighed and decided to confront them with something. When they saw it, both froze. "You can't be serious. You can't divorce me. I'm already single. My name is Avery. I've been married for 5 years to Daniel, who I met when I was in college. We married after a strong proposal from him, but our marriage wasn't exactly what I expected. Daniel always put his mom first. Whenever we had to make any decisions, big or small, he'd say, 'I'll ask my mom.' From our honeymoon destination to choosing a dentist, even down to the color of our curtains, he always consulted her and followed her advice. At first, I was concerned, but I ignored it. While our marriage wasn't perfect, it wasn't terrible either. Daniel helped with simple chores like taking out the trash, even if he complained. On weekends, we'd go out or take short trips, and he always celebrated our birthdays and anniversaries with gifts. As long as I didn't rock the boat with his mom, things seemed fine. But after Daniel's father passed away, things started to change. "Hey, Avery, can we talk for a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" Daniel asked, sitting down during dinner. "Can we move in with my mom?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why now?" "I've been thinking about it ever since my dad passed. Mom's alone now, and I'm worried about her." "I understand, but she can manage on her own. I can still visit her regularly." Daniel was serious. "If you don't want to live with her, I'll divorce you." "You're serious?" "Yes. Let me think about it." After a lot of talking, we decided to move in with my mother-in-law. It wasn't an easy choice, but I was pregnant, and I thought having Daniel around would be better for the baby. I reluctantly agreed, hoping it wouldn't change my relationship with him, but the reality was much harder. Once we moved in, my mother-in-law, Belle, started to make my life miserable. Instead of helping me with my pregnancy, she ignored me and spent all day out with friends. When she came home, she'd criticize my housework. When I was young, I did everything perfectly, even when I was sick, she'd say, pointing out things like water stains or wrinkled laundry. She expected at least 3 side dishes for every meal and made me redo chores, even if I was feeling sick. I couldn't take it anymore and complained to Daniel, but he always sided with his mom. "She might be harsh, but it's your fault for not doing things right. Don't blame her." "But there are days when it's hard to even stand up. I can't do everything perfectly every day." Daniel didn't get it. "My mom did it all when she was pregnant with me, so you should be able to do it too. I need your mom to help out with the chores while I'm sick. This apartment is ours, and she doesn't pay for anything. You're the one who agreed to have her live with us. If you have a problem with it, we can get a divorce." He seemed sure I'd never leave him. I sighed at Daniel's smirk and his dismissive smile. He wasn't like this before we moved in together. Honestly, with his attitude, my mother-in-law's behavior, and my health issues, I was starting to feel overwhelmed in our marriage. One day, as usual, my mother-in-law went out with her friends, leaving me alone in the house to do the chores. I was feeling better than usual, so I took my time. I thought it would be a nice, peaceful day until my mother-in-law came home and screamed, "Belle, what's wrong with you?" "Everything is wrong. My clothes are ruined." "What?" "But I washed them like usual." "These are expensive clothes. They need to be hand-washed. How dare you put them in the washing machine? Look at this mess. These were my favorite clothes. What are you going to do about it?" "But Belle, you didn't tell me they needed hand-washing." "You're supposed to know that without me telling you." My mother-in-law was in a complete frenzy, and just then, Daniel walked in from work. "I'm home. What's going on?" "Welcome, Daniel. Avery ruined my clothes. They were so expensive." My mother-in-law cut me off, running over to Daniel. "This is the one you wear a lot, right?" Daniel looked at me as she handed him the clothes. "Avery, you can't even do laundry properly?" "Well, your mom didn't tell me they had to be hand-washed." It's my fault for not checking, but Belle should have said something too. But if you're going to act like this, I'm divorcing you. I don't want a wife who can't even do basic chores. Get out of here. Then Daniel pulled out a piece of paper from his bag. It was a divorce notice, and it was already filled out with his section completed. He slammed it on the table and smiled at me like he was amused. You should think about your attitude from now on. Then he grabbed my mother-in-law and started to leave. Hey, where are you going? We're going out to eat. I don't want my mom eating that cold, disgusting food, and I don't want to eat it either. With that, he left, and my mother-in-law followed behind him, casting a victorious glance back at me. I had been holding back for a long time, thinking it was for the sake of my baby, but when I saw the smug look on my mother-in-law's face, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the living room, looked at the divorce papers on the table, and smiled to myself. You're wrong, Daniel. I'm the one who's going to divorce you. I felt a mix of uncontrollable anger and sadness. Although Daniel always put his mother first, he was never the type to make fun of me. How had things gotten this bad? I just stared at the divorce papers, feeling helpless and unable to do anything about it. Then, my phone vibrated. It was my mom calling. Hi, Avery, how are you doing? Hi, Mom, it's been a while. You haven't contacted us lately, and your father and I are worried about you. I'm sorry, I've been busy, but I'm okay. When I heard her cheerful voice, something in me broke, and I started to cry. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear her voice. Mom. Avery, what's wrong? What happened? I could barely speak as the tears started to flow uncontrollably. All the emotions I had been holding in suddenly exploded. I told my mom everything that had happened. After I finished, my mom was even more upset than I was. It's okay if you get a divorce. Don't worry about raising the baby. Your father and I will support you. We've raised a child before, and look how well you turned out. We'll handle it, she said, trying to make me feel better. And actually, this might be good timing. Your father and I are planning to build a new house. I called today to tell you about it. I was shocked. I couldn't quite understand what she was saying at first. My mom excitedly described the house they were planning to build, 2 stories with a garden. Even though her tone was playful and full of excitement, she was already talking about the land, floor plans, and costs. Everything was ready to go. They just needed to sign the contract and start construction. Would you like to live with us, Avery? Well, if you're getting a divorce, you'll need a place to stay. With the baby coming, it'll be easier for us to help you out here. Her offer felt like pity, and I felt a bit ashamed to depend on my parents at my age, but I was grateful. I had quit my job when I became pregnant and wasn't sure how I'd manage to find a new place to live, especially with the baby on the way. Living alone didn't seem like an option anymore. I accepted her offer and decided to move in with her when the new house was ready, but I still felt guilty, so I decided to put a down payment on the house with the money I had saved before I got pregnant. This way, I could contribute and buy it together with them. Over the next few months, I quietly went through with the divorce without Daniel or my mother-in-law knowing. Once I made the decision, I felt a huge sense of relief. I didn't care what anyone else thought. My mother-in-law became even more critical and selfish, and Daniel continued to use me, taking advantage of me and looking down on me. The small bit of affection I had for him faded completely in those months. He and my mother-in-law stayed together, while I stayed at my parents' house, preparing to leave. I enjoyed discussing new furniture and baby items for the house with my parents, something I hadn't done without stress before. My mother-in-law wasn't there to criticize my taste in furniture or add expensive things to my shopping cart without asking. I forgot how enjoyable stress-free shopping could be. I was excited about my new life. When the new house was finished and it was finally time to move in, I filed for divorce at the city office. Daniel had left the divorce papers on the table that day we argued about my mother-in-law's clothes. After they left, I grabbed the papers and kept them in a safe place, thinking I might need them later. At first, I had hoped we would have a proper discussion about it, since we had been a reasonably successful couple before all of this, but now, I was ready to move forward. I decided to leave without saying anything because of how my mother-in-law mistreated me every day and how Daniel never listened to me. He didn't defend me and kept threatening divorce whenever we argued. A few days before moving out, I filed the divorce papers, and they were officially accepted. Now, I was a free woman, and I felt lighter. I moved into my parents' new house, and for the first time in a long while, I was truly enjoying my life. But one day, an unexpected visitor arrived. Hey, Avery, you should have invited us over as soon as you got settled. That's right, you're treating us terribly. My mother-in-law and Daniel showed up at the door. I didn't know how they found out, but they barged in without permission. It's a nice house with a garden, which is rare for you. I wonder where my room is, my mother-in-law said as if nothing had happened. I know you're a useless wife who can't even handle housework, but I guess you can be useful once in a while, she added. I forced myself to stifle a laugh. They didn't realize we were already divorced. I'm not your wife anymore, I told them calmly. What? Are you crazy? We're married. You're my wife, Daniel snapped. No, I'm single. I'm a stranger to you now, I replied. Please leave right now, I said, pointing to the door. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law asked. I filed for the divorce a while ago, and it was accepted. We're no longer married, I explained. Daniel seemed confused and didn't believe me. I don't know what you're upset about, but I'll apologize. Let's work this out, he said. I don't care about your apology, I responded. We're already divorced. I showed him the divorce certificate that I had kept safe. Daniel's face went pale as he read it. When did this happen? He asked, stammering. You signed the papers yourself, I reminded him. The day I accidentally ruined the clothes. You left completed divorce papers on the table. Daniel insisted the papers were invalid, but I reminded him of everything he had said. I had been recording our conversations and keeping a diary, which I now played back for him. There were recordings of his and his mother's words, including him saying, "If you serve food like this, I'm divorcing you." They stood frozen in shock. Since you two are strangers now, you need to leave. I never invited you in. If you don't leave, I'll call the police, I said. They panicked and rushed out, and I locked the door behind them. It turns out that after finding out my parents and I had bought a new house, Daniel and his mother moved out of their place, ended their lease, and struggled to find somewhere new to live. Their life together wasn't going as smoothly as before. My mother-in-law, who had forced me to do all the housework, didn't want to do it herself, and Daniel, who wasn't used to it, had to take on the chores. She also told friends and relatives about moving to a luxurious new house, but in reality, she ended up in a generic apartment. This led to rumors about her being dishonest. The stress caused her to lash out at Daniel, and they argued constantly, with no one else to vent to. My mother-in-law took her frustrations out on him, and their relationship became even more strained. As for me, I was happily living in the new house with my parents and my healthy baby boy, who was born safely. My parents were supporting me, and I planned to return to work when my son was older. My goal was to raise my son in a home full of love and happiness, and every day I worked hard to make that dream a reality. I was finally living a peaceful and fulfilling life. Music? Thank you.
After finishing my Instagram post, I let out a deep sigh. On the screen was a picture of our family of 3 smiling in front of our home in Mission Ridge. The photo showed my husband James lifting our daughter Amy high in the air, with the Spanish colonial revival-style mansion's white walls bathed in sunset light as the backdrop. I stood beside them, watching their interaction with a gentle smile. The perfect shot. The likes had already surpassed 300. Family time, perfect family, happy family. As I added these hashtags, I felt conflicted. Linda, Amy's crying again, my husband's irritated voice echoed from upstairs. I hastily put down my smartphone and rushed up the stairs. The hallway leading to the master bedroom was filled with the organic aroma we'd bought from Whole Foods Market. Amy was crying on the bed, clutching tightly to her white rabbit stuffed animal, Bunny. Her night crying had increased lately. Just recently, her teacher at the Montessori preschool had reported that something seemed off about her behavior. "What's wrong, princess?" I embraced Amy gently while asking. "Another bad dream?" "Yes." Her small head nodded against my chest. "I have work to do," my husband called from outside the door. James, holding his Tesla Model Y keys, was already dressed for work. His usual navy suit exuded the authority of a senior manager at the local branch office on State Street. An annual income of $120,000. For our family living in Santa Barbara's upscale neighborhood, it was essential income. I myself earn $80,000 as an event planner at the Ritz-Carlton Baccara. Even so, the rent for this house is $4,000 per month. Considering living expenses, both of us working was a natural choice. 5 years ago, when we first met at a corporate party at the hotel, I was drawn to James's sincere personality and dedicated approach to his career. After dating for a year, we got married. Our honeymoon memories in Hawaii still remain on Instagram with the hashtag #PerfectHoneymoon. Then 2 years later, Amy descended into our lives. A perfect life. At least, that's how it should appear on social media. Well, I'm off, James's voice came from the entrance. Recently, he'd been coming home later and later. He explained it was because work had increased at their branch office of the Silicon Valley tech company, but feeling Amy's small body temperature against me, I became lost in thought. Before marriage, I was a career woman through and through. Even now I continue working, but it's clearly different from before. Housework and childcare have basically become my responsibility. On holidays, we spend time at nearby Butterfly Beach and go shopping at the mall. On Sundays, we attend service at Trinity Episcopal Church. On the surface, it's the very picture of an ideal young family's daily life. Perhaps my over 2,000 Instagram followers are proof of that. But lately, I've been feeling increasingly uneasy. My husband comes home later, and with Amy's night crying, conversation between us as a couple has decreased. Above all, I'm worried about Amy's condition. My usually bright and energetic daughter seems to be carrying some anxiety. "Hey, Amy," I gently stroked her head. "What are you going to play at preschool today?" Amy still wouldn't let go of her rabbit stuffed animal. "I don't want to go." Those words filled me with guilt as a mother. Balancing work and childcare. While pursuing ideals, was I losing sight of what's most important? Outside the window, the bells of Mission Santa Barbara broke the morning silence. The white-walled church watches over this city daily as its landmark. Its sound seemed to awaken some anxiety lurking deep in my heart. My smartphone rang. I thought it was a message from James, but it wasn't. It was from the preschool. "Good morning. As we mentioned yesterday, we're concerned about Amy's condition. Were you able to take her temperature this morning?" The message was from 10 minutes ago. James should handle it. Though I tried to convince myself of this, I felt unsettled somehow. An intuitive anxiety stirred in my heart. But I absolutely couldn't miss this project. The client had specifically requested my portfolio. The sky was gradually brightening. In the distance, I could see the Los Angeles-bound flight moving from the parking area to the runway. In the morning mist, the airplane's silhouette became increasingly clear. While heading to the check-in counter, I checked my phone again. I couldn't help worrying about Amy. But there were no messages from James. He'll be fine, I told myself. In the 5 years since our marriage, he'd never made any major mistakes with childcare. Rather, on social media, he was praised as the best dad, an exemplary father. Still, I was worried. His expression before heading to the bathroom this morning seemed somehow different from usual. Instead of his usual warm smile, he seemed irritated about something. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe it was because it was so early in the morning. On my way to the boarding gate, I stopped at the airport Starbucks. As usual, I ordered organic green tea. On the shelf beside the register were the pastries that Amy loves. I decided to buy some on my way back. Boarding will begin in 15 minutes, the announcement echoed through the terminal. As I hurried along, I let out a deep sigh. At that time, I had no way of knowing that this Los Angeles business trip would drastically change our family's destiny. The Santa Barbara cityscape passed slowly by the taxi window. At 7 p.m., the bells of Mission Santa Barbara were ringing in the distance. The meeting had gone well. The $2 million wedding plan had been approved, and I'd gained the client's trust. The drive home should have been filled with joy. And yet, somehow I felt unsettled. Entering the upscale Mission Ridge neighborhood, the usual peaceful streetscape spread before me. Well-maintained front yards, neatly lined street trees. But as we approached our house, my sense of unease grew stronger. "This is fine here," I said. Getting out of the taxi, I looked up at the white-walled house. All the windows were dark. Even the porch light was off. "Amy? James?" I turned the key and opened the front door. No response. While taking off my shoes, I checked my smartphone. No messages, no missed calls, nothing. "Is anyone here?" Entering the living room, there was a strange atmosphere. Despite the afternoon sunlight still lingering inside, an odd darkness seemed to dominate. The usual sound of the TV, Amy's laughter, nothing could be heard. "James? Amy?" My voice was slightly trembling. Just as I was about to head upstairs, my eyes caught the basement door. A faint light was leaking from underneath. "What's this?" A red liquid was slowly seeping out from under the door. Like an ominous line drawn by someone. My heart started racing. Feeling my hands shake, I slowly approached the door. "Amy." No answer. My hand touched the doorknob. Cold. Unnaturally cold to the touch. Slowly, I opened the door. The emergency light illuminating the stairs cast a thin light on the basement's darkness. I gasped. There were multiple scratch marks on the wall. Marks of small hands desperately scratching the wall. As if someone had desperately sought help. "Amy. Where are you?" My voice cracked. Down one step, then another. My feet were unsteady. Broken red wine bottles scattered on the floor. Next to them, Amy's precious bunny lay tragically discarded. The white rabbit stuffed animal was stained with red wine. No, this can't be. I collapsed to my knees. On the cold floor, red wine mixed with blood. Small bloodstains. Had they flowed from Amy's fingers? The scratch marks continued along the wall. From the dark stairs to the depths of the basement, traces of desperation were etched. "Amy." My scream echoed in the sealed space. Just then, my smartphone rang. An unknown number displayed on the screen. In my distressed state, I instinctively pressed the answer button. "Hello, Linda," a woman's voice. An unfamiliar yet calm voice. "I'm Carol Martin. I'm calling about Amy." She's sleeping at my house right now. At those words, I couldn't stand up. Relief and confusion washed over me simultaneously. Is Amy safe? Yes. She had some minor injuries to her fingers, but they've already been treated. She's safe now. But, why, who are you? Words failed me. My mind went blank. I'll explain everything later. For now, please be assured. Carol's voice had a strange persuasiveness. Like a longtime friend. Could you come to my house? For Amy's sake. I nodded. Even though she couldn't see me through the phone. Looking up at the stairs again, the scratch marks looked increasingly vivid in the darkness. What exactly happened in this basement? Where was my husband? And who was this woman named Carol? The wine shards creaked faintly under my shoes. Carol's house was in a quiet residential area about 15 minutes by car from Mission Ridge. A modern single-family home with white as its base color. Carefully tended lavender was planted at the entrance, its fragrance wafting on the evening breeze. The interior was simple yet sophisticated, with abstract paintings adorning the walls. The scent of herb tea drifted from the kitchen, creating a somehow calming space. Just inside the entrance, I spotted my child's shoes. The small pink sneakers she always wore to preschool. Next to them were disposable slippers that must have been used at the hospital. On the living room coffee table, a first aid kit remained placed out. The faint smell of disinfectant lingered in the air. Amy is sleeping in the guest room upstairs. Carol Martin was a beautiful woman who conveyed a certain fragility within her dignified bearing. Even in the way she offered warm herb tea, there was gentleness. We have a lot to talk about, don't we? As she sat down on the living room sofa, Carol quietly began. Through the large window, the night view of Santa Barbara spread out. I've been involved with James for 3 months. My hands shook at those words. A truth I had suspected was now confronting me as reality. As a HR director for a medical equipment manufacturer, we had business dealings with his company. Carol continued, choosing her words carefully. At first it was purely business. But gradually. I nodded silently. I had no feeling of wanting to blame her now. I just wanted to know about Amy. Today, I had an appointment to meet James at the hotel at 3:30 p.m. But his behavior was clearly strange. Irritated, unsettled. And Carol let out a deep sigh. He said he had locked that nuisance of a daughter in the basement. My heart leaped violently. At first I thought it was a joke. But his eyes were serious. He said, she wouldn't stop crying, so I shut her up. Carol's voice trembled. Actually, 3 weeks ago, I saw your photo on his phone and kept your emergency contact information. I felt guilty about the affair, in case something happened. Outside the window, street lights flickered. I went straight to his house. I knew there was a spare key hidden under the planter by the entrance. He had mentioned it before. And Amy. The basement door was open. I could hear small cries. When I went in, Amy was trembling in a dark corner. Tears welled up in my eyes. Just imagining it made my chest tighten. Red wine bottles were scattered on the floor. blood from Amy's fingers. It seems she hurt herself while desperately trying to open the door. Bunny. The stuffed animal. Amy was holding it tightly. But it got stained with wine. Carol stood up and brought a new stuffed animal from the kitchen. A white rabbit. Just like Bunny. I bought it at a shop on the way. As a replacement for the original stuffed animal. Her words caught in her throat. This time, tears fell from Carol's eyes. Why? I asked in a trembling voice. A voice squeezed from my throat. Why would he do something like this? Everything went dark before my eyes. The warmth from when I kissed Amy's forehead this morning came back to me. The casual daily life when I left the note saying, "Be a good girl." And just a few hours later, my beloved daughter was trembling in fear in a dark basement. During that time, I was excited about a $2 million wedding meeting. While I was looking at my smartphone on the train, Amy might have been desperately calling for help. Feelings of self-reproach washed over me. As a mother, I should have noticed more. The unease in the morning, my husband's unnatural behavior, the message from the preschool, I had missed all the signs. Desperate to balance work and childcare, I failed to notice that what was most important was in crisis. James picked up Amy from preschool at 2 p.m., Carol began slowly, as if organizing the timeline. Originally, he was supposed to use extended care. But after receiving a call from the teacher worried about her condition, he had to pick her up. That's when he. Carol continued, choosing her words carefully. Amy's presence became an obstacle to keeping his 3:30 appointment with me. He considered leaving her with an acquaintance, but no one would take in a sick child. And so he chose to lock his daughter in the basement for his own desires. Dark emotions resonated. I couldn't have imagined at the time that he would make such a cruel choice. The man who always proclaimed himself best dad and played the role of the perfect father. As I listened to the story, everything connected. His unnatural behavior in the morning. The too early wake-up. The message from the preschool. He took Amy to the basement and shouted, "Be quiet." She cried out in the dark basement. Irritated by her voice, he took the red wine bottle at hand and... Carol's voice broke off. The police? Not yet. We prioritized treating Amy. Carol pulled out a file containing medical records. She was examined at the local emergency clinic. Fortunately, there were no major injuries, but her right index and middle fingers had lacerations requiring 4 stitches. She also received treatment for mild dehydration and psychological shock. Her words trailed off. The documents included photos of Amy's injuries and medical reports, all meticulously organized. The kind of thoroughness you'd expect from an HR director. I've saved the security camera footage, Carol continued. Everything should be recorded on the Ring doorbell camera. The footage from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. From when James brought Amy home, to the basement, until I rescued her. The clock showed 9 p.m. Outside the window, the full moon shone quietly. Linda, Carol looked at me with a sincere expression. I bear responsibility too. I know it's unforgivable. But for Amy's sake, what we can do from now on. At that moment, a small sound came from upstairs. Someone moving. Then, the sound of small footsteps coming down the stairs. My heart raced. The guest room door opening. A faint creak from the hallway. In that space prepared as Amy's room, a night light that Carol must have hurriedly bought cast a gentle glow. On the bed, several cushions were arranged so she could feel secure in an unfamiliar place. "Mama." Amy's voice. Like being pulled back to reality. I stood up and ran up the stairs. There was my beloved daughter, clutching the new bunny. Small bandages were wrapped around her fingers. "Mama." I held her tight, so tight. Warm. A real presence. Alive. Outside the window, the bells of Mission Santa Barbara rang in the distance. As the night deepened, Amy woke again from a nightmare. This was one of the symptoms the psychological counselor had predicted. "Mama." She calls in a small voice. "It's okay," I rush to her immediately. "There's no basement here." "Really, Daddy won't come?" "No," I nod. "And Aunt Carol is nearby too, right? So you're safe." The reunion with James in court was surprisingly anticlimactic. My former husband had become thin, like a different person. "Amy, Daddy is." I cut him off. "That's enough." The verdict was as expected. I was granted full custody, and James was issued a restraining order. 4 years in prison. Carol's testimony played a decisive role. The morning at Santa Barbara Coast always begins with the sea breeze. "Amy, are you ready?" I call from the living room. "Just a minute." A cheerful voice echoes from our corner unit on the 6th floor. Thanks to therapy, Amy was gradually regaining her natural brightness. At her new preschool, she started making friends actively. Bunny is still her best friend, but she's gained more playmates too. "It's picnic day today, right?" Carol appears with shopping bags. True to her word, she moved into the neighborhood. Saturday picnics at Butterfly Beach had become our new tradition. Work at the Ritz-Carlton Baccarat is going well. That $2 million wedding was a huge success, and I got my promotion. But now, I'm careful about maintaining a balance between work and family. My Instagram followers have decreased dramatically. I no longer post perfect family photos. Instead, I save Amy's smiles and our everyday moments just for ourselves. "Mama, look." Amy comes to show off her new swimsuit. It matches Bunny's color. Indeed, the white swimsuit matched the color of the new Bunny. The old Bunny remains in police custody as evidence, along with the memories of that day. Amy's recovery is progressing well. We always receive positive evaluations during our regular sessions with the psychological counselor. However, complete recovery will still take time. Sometimes, Amy still dreams about the basement. But whenever she wakes up, either I or Carol is always by her side. The fear of darkness is gradually fading. The house in Mission Ridge has already been sold. I heard a new family lives there now. The basement has been renovated into a wine cellar. I'm ready. Amy comes running with her beach bag. "Aunt Carol, did you make sandwiches?" "Of course," Carol smiles. "Peanut butter and jelly, your favorite." This modest happiness is what matters most to us now. A life where we don't need to pretend to be perfect. Mama, Amy suddenly asks. We're happy now, aren't we? Yes, I answer without hesitation. Very happy. Outside the window, the waves of the Pacific Ocean gently lap at the shore. The bells of Mission Santa Barbara are now far away. But our new life continues with steady steps forward. We no longer need perfect family photos. Just genuine smiles. Sometimes tears. And above all, a true bond of caring for each other. That was the path we chose. That night, after putting Amy to bed in Carol's guest room, we called the police. Santa Barbara police officers in uniform arrived within 30 minutes. First and foremost, we're glad your child is safe, the female officer quietly states. Her name tag reads Sarah Murphy. May we see the security camera footage? We play the Ring camera footage that Carol had saved. At 2 p.m., James returns home carrying a sick-looking Amy. His expression already lacks its usual gentleness. Stay in the basement and be quiet. The security camera captured even his fierce expression at that moment. Next comes footage of him heading to the basement with a wine bottle. And hours later, the scene of Carol rescuing Amy. This is clearly child abuse, Officer Murphy determines immediately. An arrest warrant will be issued right away. Several hours later, James was arrested at his workplace. In the Santa Barbara police station interrogation room, his expression had completely changed. Why? He pounds the table. Why were you at my house? He glares at Carol. I recommend you exercise your right to remain silent, the interrogator calmly states. I have rights. It's my house. Amy is my daughter. At his voice, I shudder in the next room. It's unbelievable that this is the same voice as my once gentle husband. They'll introduce us to a trauma care specialist, Carol explains while spreading out documents. Her HR director network proves valuable once again. The next morning, Amy plays in the pediatric clinic's playroom. She won't let go of the new bunny. Mama, watch. Amy calls out while stacking blocks. Her voice is quieter than before. Still, her smile is gradually returning. That's wonderful, I smile back. What kind of castle are you making? It's not a castle. It's our new home. At those words, Carol and I exchange glances. In the examination room, the child psychologist explains carefully. Just like treating physical wounds, healing the heart takes time. However, Amy shows strong signs of recovery. We can never return to the house in Mission Ridge. Every time we see the basement door, the horror of that day would come back. The scratch marks must still remain on the wall. Look at this, Carol holds out her smartphone. A new apartment on Santa Barbara coast. You can see the ocean. The rent is reasonable too. But I'll be your guarantor. And she hesitates slightly. If you don't mind, I'm thinking of living nearby. I look up in surprise. I know I can never fully make amends. But I want to be there for you and Amy from now on. Outside the window, Amy plays on the playground equipment, carefully holding her new bunny. A few days later, We meet with our legal counsel at the entrance of Trinity Episcopal Church. After Sunday service, we discuss divorce and custody procedures in a quiet room of the church. We have sufficient evidence, the lawyer declares. The security camera footage, medical records, Carol's testimony. You'll almost certainly get custody. Amy was playing in the church garden. Watched over by Carol, she chases butterflies like a child who knows nothing of the basement's horror. Mama! Suddenly, Amy runs up to me. There's no more basement. My chest tightens. That's right, I hold her tight. You'll never have to go into dark places again. Promise. Her small finger seeks a pinky promise. I promise. That weekend, we completed our move to the new home on Santa Barbara coast. A corner unit on the 6th floor with refreshing sea breezes. From the living room, you can see the sunset sinking into the Pacific Ocean. Do you like it? Carol asks Amy. Yes. A bouncy voice we haven't heard in a while. Bunny's happy too. The house in Mission Ridge now seems like a distant past. I've learned the meaning behind seemingly perfect family photos. I am Melissa Anderson, a 34-year-old ordinary mother living in the suburbs of St. Paul, Minnesota. At 7 in the morning, winter sunlight streams through the kitchen window, and the coffee maker on the counter fills the air with a pleasant aroma. This is how my day begins. While making French toast with the scent of cinnamon wafting through the air, I listen to my daughter Hannah's footsteps coming from upstairs. Now 8 years old, she's a third grader at Maplewood Elementary School. At this age, she always needs a little prodding to get ready in the morning. Hannah, breakfast is ready. Following the sound of footsteps rushing down the stairs, my daughter appears with a pink ribbon in her hair. The way she enters the kitchen while fixing her hair reminds me of a little lady. She has an artistic talent and a unique sense of style in combining clothes. Today, she's wearing a light blue dress with a white cardigan, and at her collar, she's pinned her favorite rainbow brooch. I'm going to play with dolls with Emily after school today. Over breakfast, Hannah excitedly talks about her plans for school. She loves playing with dolls and often spends time after school with her classmates. Thanks to her bright and honest personality, she has many friends and is well liked by her teachers. That's wonderful. But remember to finish your homework first, okay? Hannah gives a small nod to my words. My growing daughter has a healthy appetite, and the French toast disappears in no time. My husband Brian is away on another business trip this week. He works as an engineer at a medical equipment manufacturer, developing new products. Despite his busy schedule, this gentle and family-oriented man always makes time to spend weekends with us. When we met 6 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding, I was drawn to his sincere personality. After dating for a year, we married and enjoyed a happy newlywed life. And now, we've built this fulfilling family life. I work as a project manager at a web design company. Balancing work and childcare isn't easy, but I try to maintain a bright and positive attitude. We moved to this new residential area a year ago, choosing it primarily for the good school district. Our 2-story house, predominantly white, is the perfect space for our family. Through the large living room window, I can see our front yard gleaming in the morning sun. The flowers Brian planted over the weekend are still blooming vibrantly, despite Minnesota's cold weather. The living room with its fireplace is essential for our family gatherings during holidays. Especially in the cold season, we spend time cuddling on the sofa watching movies or enjoying board games together. Brian's sister Vanessa lives about 15 minutes away by car. She's a career-driven woman working as a financial advisor at an investment consulting firm. Though unmarried, she serves as vice president of the PTA and takes care of their parents. Her meticulous personality can sometimes seem strict, but she dotes on Hannah very much. "Mom, it's time to go to school." While lost in thought, the clock has struck 8. I pack Hannah's lunchbox with homemade sandwiches and fill her water bottle with her favorite apple juice. As I watch my daughter's retreating figure at the doorway, I feel another day beginning. With a coffee from Caribou Coffee in hand, I begin preparing for work. I have an important client meeting today. After quickly cleaning up breakfast while looking around the open kitchen, I sling my laptop bag over my shoulder. Getting into the car, I check my makeup in the rearview mirror. Hoping this peaceful life continues, I start the engine. My car heads toward I-35W in the cool morning air, signaling the start of another ordinary day. The end-of-year charity bazaar at Maplewood Elementary School is an annual event at this time of year. This year, on the last Saturday of November, the schoolyard was buzzing with parents busy with preparations since early morning. The sky was covered with gloomy gray clouds, and occasional snowflakes fell and melted. Still, everyone worked with determined expressions, setting up tents and arranging merchandise. They all understood how important this bazaar was for supporting families in need in the community. In one corner of the schoolyard, food trucks were already lined up, ready to serve warm drinks. The sweet scent of cinnamon and cocoa wafted through the cold air. I had been helping with the setup in the gymnasium since early morning as a PTA member. Over 30 sales booths were neatly arranged, filled with donated items from parents and community residents, used clothing, handmade crafts, toys, and more. All proceeds from this bazaar would go to support families in poverty in the community. "Melissa, does this arrangement look all right?" It was Vanessa who called out to me. As PTA vice president, she was one of the organizers of this bazaar. Her meticulous personality really proves valuable at times like these. "Yes, it's perfect. Thanks to you, this year's bazaar is going to be wonderful." As the 10 a.m. opening time approached, a long line formed at the school gates. People from the community waited eagerly for the opening, holding warm drinks in the cold weather. The tempting aroma of hot dogs and popcorn wafted from the food stalls. Hannah was helping nearby with her friend Emily. Both wore handmade staff badges on their chests, looking very proud. As soon as the doors opened, the gymnasium filled with excitement. People gathered at each booth, checking price tags and examining items. Having finished my initial tasks, I decided to look around the booths with Hannah. At the back of the gymnasium was the antique corner. Inside glass cases were carefully polished dishes and vintage accessories. The booth was being managed by a woman named Jane. Suddenly, Hannah stopped in her tracks. Her gaze was fixed on a doll marked with a special item tag in the glass case. It was a Western doll that looked as if it had stepped out of the Victorian era. The pale cream-colored dress was so exquisite it hardly seemed handmade, with even tiny shoes crafted in detail. The golden curls had a soft sheen, and the porcelain cheeks were tinted with a gentle rose color. The doll's deep blue eyes emanated a mysterious sparkle that captivated viewers. "Mom, this doll is so beautiful." Hannah's voice was filled with pure admiration. The antique collection tag showed a price of $298. While not cheap, it could be considered reasonable given its value. "Please, this could be my Christmas present." My daughter's eyes sparkled. Indeed, Christmas was less than a month away. "I thought this doll might become a special memory." "She has such lovely eyes," Jane smiled kindly. "This is truly a treasured piece. I'm sure she'll become a wonderful friend for your daughter." Encouraged by those words, I decided to make the purchase. Jane carefully wrapped the doll while explaining its history and care instructions in detail. A golden ribbon was beautifully tied on top of the wrapping paper. "Thank you, Mom. I'll take good care of her." Hannah hugged the doll preciously. Seeing her smile made me feel the expensive purchase was worth it. "Melissa, are you leaving already?" I turned to find Vanessa standing there. Her gaze briefly fell on the package Hannah was holding. Yes, Hannah found a beautiful doll. She wants to take it home right away to display it in her room. "I see. I'm glad you found something nice." I thought I noticed a change in Vanessa's tone, but it must have been my imagination. She hurriedly headed off to another booth. On our way to the parking lot, we crossed the schoolyard where food stalls were bustling with activity. A long line had formed in front of the hot chocolate stand steaming with warm vapor. In the cold weather, children were happily chatting while warming their hands with hot drinks. "Mom, I want to make a room for Elizabeth when we get home." Hannah's eyes sparkled as she kept checking the doll in the package. The way she gently stroked the edge of the wrapping paper with her small fingers showed her gentle nature. "That's nice. Maybe when Dad gets back from his business trip, he can help make some small furniture for the doll. Brian is quite handy. He always enjoys doing crafts with Hannah on weekends. I'm sure he'll create a wonderful home for the doll." When we reached the parking lot, our car was lightly covered in frost. I started the engine, waiting for the heater to warm up the interior. In the passenger seat, Hannah held the doll preciously, as if welcoming a new family member. "Hey Mom, I think I'll name her Elizabeth. Because she looks like a princess, don't you think?" Hearing those words, I couldn't help but smile. Indeed, looking at her elegant appearance, she did seem like a princess who had stepped out of an old court. As I drove away, I glanced at the school building in the rearview mirror. The bustle of the bazaar grew distant. At that moment, I had no idea, or rather, I didn't want to imagine, that this doll would dramatically change our lives. From the day we brought the doll home from the charity bazaar, Hannah's life became colored like a beautiful story. It was the beginning of what seemed like days straight out of an Andersen fairy tale. That evening, Hannah held an unwrapping ceremony for the doll in her room. The way she carefully unwrapped the packaging, peeling away each layer of paper, showed the caution of handling a treasure. She carefully stored the golden ribbon in a box, labeling it "Keepsake." "Elizabeth, this is your room." Hannah created a small space beside her own bed. She laid out a lace handkerchief and rolled up a soft hand towel as a pillow. That night, until bedtime, she kept gently brushing the doll's hair. Elizabeth, as the doll was named, became a constant companion in every aspect of her daily life. They would wake up together in the morning, and the doll would sit in the chair next to her at breakfast. When going to school, Hannah would carefully carry her along. She received special permission from her teacher to play with the doll during breaks. She proudly showed off the doll's outfit changes to her friends' envious gazes. "Elizabeth is my best friend." Hannah's expression when she said this was filled with pure affection. She spent hours with the doll in her room after school, dressing her in small dresses I had made, carefully brushing her hair, sometimes talking to Elizabeth about what happened at school, treating her just like a real friend. At night, she always made a small bed for the doll next to her own. The cute bed that Brian made over the weekend was covered with soft lace sheets that Hannah had chosen. "Good night, Elizabeth. Let's play together tomorrow too." Such peaceful days continued. However, everything would change after that night. It was past midnight. Outside was completely dark, with only the occasional sound of wind rattling the windows breaking the silence. I was just finishing checking some work documents and preparing for bed. A faint knocking sound came from my bedroom door. The sound was small and hesitant, but definitely there. "Mom, are you awake?" When I opened the door, Hannah stood there in her pajamas. She was clutching Elizabeth tightly in her arms, looking as if she might cry at any moment. The dim hallway light cast an eerie shadow on her worried face. "What's wrong? Did you have a bad dream?" "Mom, the doll is making a ticking sound. I'm scared." Hannah's voice was trembling. At first, I thought she might be hearing some mechanical sound. But indeed, a faint mechanical sound could be heard coming from inside the doll. "Can I see it for a moment?" When Hannah timidly handed me the doll, I noticed something odd about its weight. It was too heavy for an antique doll. And certainly, there was a rhythmic sound from inside. Tick, tick. In that moment, a chill ran down my spine. This was clearly not normal. My maternal instinct was sending out a strong warning. "Hannah, let's sleep together tonight." As I invited my daughter into my bed, I made a firm decision. This doll needed to be disposed of immediately. First thing tomorrow morning, I would take it directly to the waste disposal site. In the midnight bedroom, I continued stroking Hannah's small back until she fell asleep. Outside the window, cold wind shook the trees, casting unsettling shadows on the wall. I carefully placed the doll in the closet and made sure to lock the door. The ticking sound could still be faintly heard. This night would become the longest night of my life. I had to deal with this situation as early as possible in the morning. My daughter's safety was paramount. With this singular thought, I waited for dawn. In bed, Hannah slept closely pressed against me. Looking at her peaceful sleeping face, I strengthened my resolve. As a mother, I had to protect my child from this dangerous premonition, even if it meant parting with a beloved doll. The clock hands moved painfully slowly toward dawn. The eerie sound could still be heard from the closet. The regular ticking, like a timer, only increased my anxiety. The street lights suddenly went out, making the surroundings even darker. It was the darkest time just before dawn. Tree shadows flickered on the walls, and occasional gusts of wind rattled the windows. Hannah stirred slightly in my arms but fortunately seemed to be in a deep sleep. Checking my smartphone screen showed 4:15 a.m. The waste disposal site opens at 7 a.m., if I remember correctly. I still had to face this anxiety for over 2 hours. After some hesitation, I decided to call Brian. This situation felt too overwhelming to handle alone. "Melissa, what's wrong at this hour?" My husband's sleepy voice came through. "I'm sorry for waking you, but I needed to talk." I explained the situation in a low voice, about the strange sound coming from the doll, Hannah being frightened, and my sense of unease. "Should I come home right away?" Brian's worried voice gave me some comfort. "No, it's okay. I plan to take it to the disposal site first thing in the morning." "But, am I making the right decision?" "Melissa, I think you should trust your maternal instinct. Honestly, I'm also uncomfortable having something bought from a stranger in our house, especially a children's toy. But Hannah was so fond of it. Her safety comes first. We can always buy her a new doll." "I support your judgment." My husband's voice on the phone carried strong conviction. "I can be back by tomorrow afternoon. Until then, maybe consider staying at a friend's house." "No, it's okay. I'll dispose of it right away." After ending the call, I felt a bit calmer. My husband's words had reinforced my decision. The first light of dawn began to spread gradually from the eastern sky. I watched intently as night turned to day. Never in my life had I wished so desperately for daybreak. The clock showed 6:30 a.m. Hannah was still sleeping in my bed. How wonderful it would be if last night's events had just been a dream. While wishing this, the faint mechanical sound leaking from the closet reminded me that this fear was real. I carefully wrapped the doll in newspaper and placed it in a black garbage bag. With firm resolve to head to the waste disposal site as soon as possible. I could explain everything to Hannah later. Right now, my daughter's safety was the top priority. After disposing of the doll at the waste site, I was driving home. The morning news was playing on the radio. Just as the traffic information ended and the weather forecast was about to finish. Breaking news: an explosion has occurred at the Riverside Waste Disposal site in the St. Paul suburbs. We now go live to the scene for details. At that moment, my hands began to shake. Black smoke could be seen rising from the direction of the waste disposal site I had just left. The announcer continued. At approximately 7:15 a.m., workers at the waste disposal site reported suspicious explosive sounds. A small explosion occurred on site, causing damage to surrounding equipment. Fortunately, due to the early hour, few workers were present, and no injuries have been reported. I quickly pulled the car over to the shoulder. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. If I had been just a few dozen minutes later in bringing it to the disposal site. The mere thought sent chills down my spine. A TV station helicopter was broadcasting aerial footage of the disposal site with rising black smoke. Emergency vehicles, police cars and fire trucks, were arriving one after another at the scene in the live coverage. Police are analyzing surveillance camera footage collected from the scene. They are working to quickly identify suspicious objects. Hearing those words, I made my decision. I needed to report to the police immediately. When I returned home, there was an unfamiliar car parked in front of the entrance. Two men identifying themselves as police officers were conducting interviews with nearby residents. Mrs. Robertson from next door was speaking with one of the officers. It was at yesterday's school bazaar. Everyone was talking about this unusual doll that was on display. The moment they heard those words, the officers' expressions changed. Several hours later, Maplewood Elementary School was filled with investigators. The footage from security cameras installed in the schoolyard was being examined, and bazaar sales records were being checked one by one. Everyone involved in running the bazaar had to be interviewed. Jane, who had managed the antique corner, testified tearfully. That doll arrived as an anonymous donation a week ago. Following regulations, it was verified by the PTA officers. The investigation progressed at a surprising pace. Among the fragments recovered from the explosion site, pieces of the doll's porcelain were discovered. Furthermore, remains of a timer-triggered detonator were found. The scene investigation revealed that this was not an accident but a planned crime. The media competed to report on the incident, sending shockwaves through the local community. The investigation headquarters' announcement that the perpetrator likely conspired with multiple accomplices filled my heart with further anxiety. Why did the school bazaar have to be targeted? And who was behind this incident? In the evening, Brian returned early from his business trip. After leaving Hannah with his parents, we went to be interviewed by the police. The investigators asked detailed questions about the strange feeling I had and the sounds I heard late at night. Mrs. Anderson, your courageous decision may have prevented a major disaster. The detective inspector's words filled me with mixed emotions. While the worst might have been avoided, why did such a terrifying thing have to happen? That night, the news was dominated by coverage of the incident. The security camera footage of the doll was broadcast over and over. Each time I saw it, the terror of that midnight came rushing back. Mom, what happened to Elizabeth? Hannah's innocent question upon returning from her grandparents' house left me speechless. To think we had to take away her precious memories in such a way. Outside the window, several media vehicles were parked. This once peaceful suburban town had been deeply shaken by a single doll. About a week after the incident, a shocking truth came to light. The reality was a development that no one could have predicted. The person arrested was none other than my sister-in-law Vanessa. She had carried out the crime by exploiting her position as PTA vice president. During the interrogation process, her meticulous plan was revealed. For 6 months prior, her device history showed she had been researching bomb-making methods on anonymous internet forums. She had carefully purchased electronic components, timers, and explosive materials from separate stores bit by bit, taking precautions not to raise suspicion. The suspect used multiple accounts to gather technical information. I was left speechless at the investigator's explanation. The sister-in-law I had always thought of as meticulous and serious had planned such a thing. Even more shocking was her method at the bazaar. Vanessa had switched the actual donated item with a fake doll containing her homemade explosive. Using her position as PTA vice president, she had tampered with it during the donation verification process. The antique corner was in a less visible location. She apparently calculated that there would be limited buyers due to the higher price setting. The investigation report continued to reveal surprising facts. 1 month before the incident, she had failed in managing her parents' inheritance, resulting in a loss of $300,000. Her misjudgment as an investment advisor had led to an irreversible situation. She was also behind in payments for her parents' nursing home fees. We believe the crime was committed after being driven into a financial corner. In the interrogation room, Vanessa had completely lost her former dignity. "It was all my fault." Her confession revealed struggles unknown to the family. Her parents' nursing home fees were $8,000 per month. On top of that pressure came the investment failure. Backed into a corner, she had reached for the worst possible option: insurance fraud. "I thought if an accident happened, everything would be resolved with the insurance. But I never expected Melissa to." According to her plan, the doll was supposed to explode in the buyer's home. Then it would have been handled as a mere accident, allowing her to collect a large insurance payout. However, my intuitive judgment had thwarted that plan. The investigation process also revealed more complex family relationships. Vanessa, who had single-handedly taken on the care of their parents, had harbored resentment toward her other siblings. No one helped her. No one understood her. Such feelings of isolation had driven her to this point. While the suspect denies the existence of other accomplices, the investigation is ongoing. The investigation headquarters announcement once again shocked the local community. A planned crime by someone in a trusted position as PTA vice president. This fact greatly shook the everyday safety that everyone had taken for granted. That night, Brian and I talked. Why didn't we notice? We should have recognized her suffering earlier. My husband's words carried deep regret. Indeed, Vanessa had seemed a bit different lately. But to think it would turn out like this. The next day, the school held an emergency parent meeting. The gymnasium was filled with concerned parents engaging in heated discussions about future preventive measures. The entire approach to charity activities would be reviewed to ensure such an incident never happened again. That night, Hannah came to my bed. "Mom, was Aunt Vanessa a bad person?" To that innocent question, I carefully chose my words to answer. Sometimes, even adults make wrong choices. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. While stroking my daughter's small head, I thought about it. People sometimes make irreversible choices when backed into a corner. But there's always some circumstance behind it. Perhaps understanding that is the first step we can take. Outside the window, camera lights from the media were still flashing. This incident had given our family much to think about. In February, when winter's cold was at its harshest, 3 months after the incident, the trial began at Ramsey County Court. Opening the heavy wooden doors to enter the courtroom, we were enveloped in a tense atmosphere. The spectator seats were filled with local residents and reporters, with what appeared to be plainclothes officers scattered throughout. A solemn silence hung in the courtroom, and while waiting for the judge's entrance, I held Brian's hand tightly. The prosecution's opening statement emphasized the brutality and premeditation of the crime. Security camera footage presented as evidence showed Vanessa repeatedly entering and exiting the antique corner on the day of the bazaar. The defendant abused her position as PTA vice president and exploited a charitable event to carry out this vile crime. The prosecutor's voice echoed through the courtroom. Expert testimony detailed the process of making the explosive device hidden in the doll. The device, assembled from commercially available materials, was set to activate after midnight. I involuntarily shuddered. If my daughter hadn't come to my room that night, frightened. The explosive power was sufficient to destroy objects within a 10-meter radius. The explosive ordnance disposal expert's testimony caused a stir in the gallery. The defense emphasized Vanessa's potential for rehabilitation. They stressed the mental pressure from managing her parents' care and inheritance failure, and the financial constraints that led to the crime. However, their defense rang hollow. The verdict was delivered on a cold morning in early March. The judge's solemn voice resonated through the courtroom. I hereby sentence the defendant, Vanessa Anderson, to 12 years imprisonment for attempted murder, violation of explosives control regulations, and fraud. Additionally, I order payment of $500,000 in damages to the victims and permanently ban entry to school facilities after release. After the verdict, our family faced a major decision. Hannah began to be called the bomb girl at school and needed psychological counseling. Moreover, our anxiety about continuing to live in this area grew. There's a nice property in the Minneapolis suburbs. At Brian's suggestion, we decided to relocate. The new house was in a quiet residential area. Hannah's new school also warmly welcomed her. "Mom, I think I can make new friends here." On moving day, Hannah said this with a smile. In her expression, I could sense the gradual healing of her emotional wounds. Meanwhile, this incident had a significant impact on the local community. Maplewood Elementary School completely revised its safety management system for all school events. Professional pre-inspection of donated items became mandatory, and additional security cameras were installed. The charity system itself underwent major changes. Anonymous donations were banned in principle, and history checks became required for all items. Furthermore, security awareness increased throughout the community, and neighborhood watch activities were strengthened. The most significant change was the enhancement of family support systems. A support center for families caring for elderly relatives was established, and initiatives began to share the economic and emotional burden across society. All to prevent another tragedy like Vanessa's. After 6 months in our new home, our family bonds seem stronger than before. We make sure to spend time together every weekend, sharing our feelings with each other. Maybe it taught us the importance of family all over again. When I said this to Brian one night, he quietly nodded. Yes, but from now on, let's create only good memories. Outside the window, spring winds rustled new buds. Our new life was just beginning to sprout as well. The scars from the incident won't easily fade. But this experience taught our family the importance of caring for one another. And above all, the importance of having the courage to trust a mother's instinct. I still believe that to this day. It was 5 a.m., and the sun hadn't fully risen yet. On my way home from the hospital, my car's headlights illuminated the dim road ahead. I rubbed my tired eyes while gripping the steering wheel, feeling somewhat relieved knowing I'd be home soon. The drive home after night shifts was always a quiet time. My name is Ashley Watson. I've been working as a pediatrician at the city hospital for 10 years now. My brown hair, which reaches my shoulders, still bears the clear marks from wearing a hairband at the hospital. My makeup is starting to fade, but I don't have the energy to touch it up before getting home. As I parked in the garage, I noticed a soft light seeping through the second-floor window. Sophia must be awake. It was unusual for her to be up at this hour. "I'm home," I called out. I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. My 14-year-old daughter appeared, her long black hair swaying, wearing her glasses. "Welcome home, Mom." "I woke up early today," Sophia said with a slightly apologetic expression. But for me, coming off a night shift, being able to talk with my daughter this early in the morning was an unexpected gift. Our house is located in a quiet residential area in the suburbs of Minneapolis. It's a 20-year-old single-family home that I bought with the divorce settlement 7 years ago. Not too big, not too small, just the right size for a mother and daughter. "Shall I make breakfast?" "I'll make it." "Mom, you should go take a shower." Watching Sophia's back as she stood in the kitchen, I felt proud of how much she'd grown. Now in 8th grade, she had become quite capable with household chores. She was responsible for washing dishes and cleaning her room, and lately, she'd shown interest in cooking too. After showering and changing clothes, the aroma of toast wafted from the kitchen. The table was set with sunny-side-up eggs, salad, and hot coffee. "Thank you, this looks delicious." Was the night shift tough? We had 2 emergency cases. But both patients pulled through. Sophia always shows understanding about my work as a doctor. For days of being on call each week, 6 night shifts per month. Our irregular schedule often limits the time we can spend together. That's why we treasure the time we do have together. We've made it a habit to always eat dinner together, and on weekends, we cook together or go shopping. "Hey, Mom," Sophia said while breaking off a piece of toast. "For my next art assignment, we have to draw a family portrait." "Oh? What kind of picture will you draw?" "I haven't decided yet." She pushed up her glasses thoughtfully. "Maybe you working at the hospital." Those words made my heart warm. I wondered how my daughter saw me. Sophia has an artistic sense. Though introverted and quiet, she comes alive when drawing. She's passionate about her activities in the art club, and her teachers think highly of her work. "Oh, that reminds me," I said. "Your dad's going to call next Saturday." Sophia's hands paused for a moment. Her relationship with her father, James, is complicated. I married him 10 years ago when I was a medical resident at the university hospital. He was a successful investment banker who became so absorbed in his work that he neglected our family. With frequent business trips and prioritizing his career over family time. When Sophia was 7, we decided to divorce. I got custody, and he pays child support regularly. However, father and daughter only meet about twice a year. "Okay. I understand." Sophia's response was matter-of-fact, but I could sense her mixed feelings. After the divorce, she suddenly started showing more mature expressions. Looking at the clock, it was already past 6 a.m. "Sophia, we should start getting ready. You have morning art club activities today, right?" "Yes. I'm continuing work on my oil painting." My daughter's voice lifted slightly. Seeing moments like these reassured me that I had made the right choice. Even if we didn't fit the ideal family model, we had built our own kind of happiness. I could hear Sophia going back upstairs to change into her uniform. I hurriedly touched up my makeup. Concealing fatigue with makeup had become a habit. The morning sun began streaming through the windows. As if announcing the start of a new day, gentle filtered sunlight softly illuminated our home. As I began another day as both a mother and a doctor, I wished this peaceful daily life would continue forever. As the seasons shifted from spring to early summer, my work had entered a fulfilling period. My reputation in the pediatrics department was excellent, with strong trust from patients. Recently, the department head had even approached me about a promotion to chief resident. "Dr. Watson, the patient in examination room 3 is ready." Nodding to the new nurse's voice, I reviewed the chart. In the examination room, a 5-year-old boy waited with his mother. When he saw me, he gripped his mother's hand tightly, looking a bit nervous. "What seems to be the matter?" I asked gently, and the boy gradually began to relax. It was the accumulation of such daily consultations that had led to my current reputation. As a single mother, balancing work and parenting hadn't been easy, but I was living a fulfilling life without financial concerns. "Doctor, my child really loves you," the mother said with a smile after the examination. Earning children's trust is the greatest joy as a doctor. My reputation at the hospital continued to grow. I was recently appointed as a mentor for young doctors. Though it meant more responsibility, I found it rewarding. My colleagues trusted me deeply, and our teamwork was well known throughout the hospital. Sophia was also doing well in middle school. She was immersed in art club activities and maintained high grades. Though she didn't have many close friends, she seemed to be managing school life at her own pace. On holidays, we would go shopping at the Mall of America or watch movies together. Last weekend, we went to Target to buy new art supplies at Sophia's request. Her passion for art seemed to grow stronger by the day. "Mom, I want this paint set." "That's fine. But haven't art supplies been getting expensive lately?" "It's okay," she said with a smile. But somewhere in that expression, I thought I saw a shadow that hadn't been there before. However, about 2 months ago, I started noticing concerning changes. The first thing I noticed was the change in her eating habits. "Sophia, you've hardly touched your salmon meunière." "Sorry. I'm not very hungry." Dishes she used to love now went barely touched. She started skipping breakfast more often. Food I put in the refrigerator was increasingly being thrown away untouched. Her sleep patterns had also become irregular. Her room light would stay on until 2 or 3 in the morning. On holidays, she often slept until nearly noon. Walking past her room, I could see the bluish glow of her smartphone seeping through the door. "You've been staying up late a lot lately. Is something wrong?" "No, just homework and thinking about things." After that vague response, Sophia returned to her room. She spent more time staring at her smartphone, refusing to let it go until the screen went dark. Sometimes she would jump at the sound of incoming messages. Concerning reports started coming from school. Her math test scores were lower than usual, and she was falling behind in submitting English homework. My usually meticulous daughter was increasingly forgetting to do her homework. When her homeroom teacher called, I was hurriedly walking down the hospital corridor to take the call. "She's been spacing out during class more often." Is there anything concerning at home? I'm sorry. I think it's just typical teenage changes. As a pediatrician, that was my assessment. Too much interference could be counterproductive. Watch over her and provide support when needed. That was my professional judgment. However, the concerning changes continued. Unfamiliar stationery and books appeared on her desk, and sometimes her wallet seemed unusually empty. Her expenses seemed to be increasing, but I didn't know where or what she was buying. I myself was busier than ever. The number of emergency surgeries had increased, and I was now responsible for training new doctors. My return times were irregular, and I had less time to talk with Sophia properly. "Dr. Watson, there's a request from the emergency room." "I understand, I'll go right away." My smartphone in my white coat pocket had an unread message from Sophia. A short question asking, "Will you be late again today?" I headed to the emergency room without being able to reply. In those hectic days, I had dismissed my daughter's changes as just teenage fluctuations. As a pediatrician and as a mother, should have been more sensitive. But I didn't understand then. The light in Sophia's room that wouldn't go out at night, the suspicious messages being sent, the cash disappearing from her wallet. All of these were warning signs of what was about to happen. When I returned home after my night shift, dragging my tired body, Sophia was already in her uniform, about to put on her shoes. Her shoelaces were tied more carefully than usual, which somehow felt unnatural. "Welcome home, Mom." "Sorry, I'm leaving early today." "This early?" "I have morning art club activities." Her behavior seemed timed to match my unusually early return from the night shift. But there seemed to be a slight tremor in her voice. She wasn't carrying her usual sketchbook, and instead clutched an unfamiliar bag. "What about breakfast?" "I'll take some bread with me, don't worry." On the kitchen counter, there was a half-cut piece of bread. The jam jar hadn't been opened. Without any sign of preparing breakfast, Sophia hurriedly left the house. As I watched her leave, something felt off. The pleats in her uniform skirt were disheveled, and her blouse collar was messy. But with my exhausted mind after the all-night shift, I didn't have the energy to think about what it might mean. Just as I was about to go to bed after taking a shower, my phone by the pillow rang. The school's number was displayed on the screen. "Mrs. Watson, I apologize, but could you come to the school right away?" The school counselor's heavy voice resonated through the receiver. I could hear people talking in hushed voices in the background. "Did something happen to my daughter? I'd like to discuss the details with you in person." The way those words trailed off suggested something serious. My heart started racing. I hurriedly changed clothes and drove to school. The journey from home to school felt longer than the usual route from the hospital to home. The usually 5-minute drive felt like an eternity today. Every red light filled me with growing anxiety. When I arrived at the school, the vice principal was standing at the staff entrance. His usually calm face was strangely tense today. An unusual silence enveloped the school building, with a faint lingering scent of fire trucks in the air. Several teachers stood in the hallway, averting their eyes as soon as they saw me. There were no students in sight. They must have been gathered in the gymnasium for an all-school assembly or something similar. "This way, please." walking down the hallway led by the vice principal. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt unnaturally bright. The place that should have been bustling with students' voices was now filled with a heavy atmosphere. When we reached the hallway in front of the principal's office, there was Sophia. She sat alone in a chair, shoulders slumped, head down. Her uniform was disheveled, her skirt wrinkled. The sketchbook she usually carried was nowhere to be seen. The unfamiliar bag I had noticed this morning was also gone. 2 police officers stood beside her. A male officer in his 50s had a calm demeanor that suggested experience, while a young female officer occasionally glanced at Sophia with concern. Their presence spoke to the seriousness of the situation. Sophia. At my voice, my daughter flinched but couldn't raise her face. Her long hair hid her face, but I could see tears falling beyond it. Mrs. Watson, the male officer, stepped forward. His movement was careful. "We need to talk to you." He pointed to a security camera monitor in the hallway. The screen showed surveillance camera footage. A date and time blinked in the corner of the screen. The footage showed events from this morning. Sophia entering the second-floor girls' bathroom. Her steps were a bit quick, as if she was conscious of her surroundings. Then, she comes out in a hurried manner, as if being chased by something. She seemed to be clutching something small in her hand. Then, faint smoke began rising from the gap in the bathroom door. The screen mercilessly recorded the gradually thickening smoke. What is this?" My knees nearly gave out, and I almost collapsed on the spot. The female officer quickly offered me a chair. We confirmed a fire had started. Fortunately, the sprinklers activated quickly, and it didn't escalate into something more serious, but... The officer's voice echoed distantly. But my eyes didn't leave my daughter's back. Her hunched shoulders trembling slightly. Her uniform looking smaller than usual. None of the lively expression she used to have while drawing at her desk remained. "Sophia, why?" Hot tears welled up in my eyes as I questioned. I had dealt with many children in pediatrics. Though I should have been able to understand their pain and sadness, I had completely failed to notice the darkness in my own child's heart. The vice principal's sigh echoed heavily in the hallway. The third stall in the second-floor girls' bathroom was the point of origin. I nodded silently to the police officer's explanation. 30 minutes had passed since the questioning began in the principal's office. Outside the window, white sprinkler water sparkled in the sunlight. Thanks to the early activation of the sprinklers, we fortunately avoided major fire damage. However, the officer placed an evidence bag on the desk. Inside was a burned mobile phone. A familiar red case. It was Sophia's phone. "We attempted to question your daughter, but she continues to remain silent. Would you cooperate with the inspection of her belongings?" I nodded again. Words wouldn't come out. Sophia beside me kept her head down. I could see her shoulders trembling slightly from time to time. The principal opened his mouth heavily. "In light of this situation, the school will be temporarily closed from today. We have already begun sending notifications to all parents." Following these words, the vice principal added, "We are also starting to receive inquiries from media outlets. We will handle this with student privacy protection as our top priority." Outside the window, the sound of news vehicles' engines could be heard starting up. When we left the building after the questioning, several cars were parked in the parking lot. I could see other parents too. Some quickly averted their eyes when they saw us, while others tried to secretly take photos with their phones. When I started the car's engine, my smartphone vibrated. It was a message from a colleague saying rumors were starting to spread on social media. "Dr. Watson, perhaps you should consider taking some time off." A message from my hospital superior had also arrived. When we got home, Sophia disappeared into her room without saying a word. I collapsed onto the living room sofa. Why did this happen? What was in my daughter's heart? Was there something I should have noticed? Memories raced through my mind like a film reel. The days of repeated night shifts and on-call duties that reduced time with my daughter. Times when I was too tired from work to properly engage with her. The signs I dismissed as typical teenage changes. As a pediatrician, I should have been able to understand many children's hearts. But I had missed the cry from my daughter's heart, who should have been closest to me. The bread from this morning remained untouched in the kitchen. 2 rice bowls lined the cupboard, and Sophia's favorite yogurt was arranged in the refrigerator. Our usual daily life suddenly felt distant. Looking up the stairs, I could hear sounds from my daughter's room upstairs. I start to approach, but my feet stop. What should I say now? What should I ask? Dusk approached, and the house gradually darkened. I didn't even have the energy to turn on the lights. I just kept thinking in the darkness. What was my daughter trying to say? What should I have been able to do? How should we face this going forward? The doorbell rang, and I squinted at the incoming light. The female police officer had returned. We found new evidence. In her hands was another evidence bag. Inside was a burned piece of paper. The fragments of readable text suggested new developments in the investigation to come. The sound of rain outside intensified the waves of regret washing over me. The light from my daughter's room upstairs flickered on the rain-wet window. That night, I greeted the morning without sleeping. My smartphone was flooded with concerned messages from colleagues and acquaintances. There were many calls from unknown numbers too. They must be from the media. The hospital formally recommended I take a leave of absence. My superior's words, "Don't worry about your patients," filled me with both gratitude and apologetic feelings. My hands trembled as I stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast. I dropped and broke my favorite mug. As I collected the fragments, tears suddenly started flowing. The everyday morning scene now felt like a distant memory. The casual conversations with my daughter, every moment we spent together, now felt precious in hindsight. There was still no sound from upstairs. I stood in the kitchen, unsure whether to bring up breakfast. On the morning of the 3rd day after the fire, the police contacted me. Outside, hints of autumn were beginning to appear. The maple leaves in the garden were starting to change color. "We've received new testimonies. Could you come to the school?" There was an unprecedented urgency in the voice on the phone. I quickly got ready and headed to the police station. My car carried my anxiety and impatience through the morning rush hour traffic. In a room at the police station, I learned shocking facts. Multiple female students had come forward. Their testimonies were surprisingly consistent. And they all pointed to one teacher, James Wilson, the science teacher. The first to speak up was a senior from the art club. Her brave action encouraged other students to come forward. Though fragmentary, the girls' testimonies revealed clear facts. Their hands trembled on the witness stand, and though they sometimes stumbled over their words, they continued to tell the truth. That evening, Sophia finally spoke at home. "Mom, I couldn't take it anymore." In a trembling voice, my daughter began to tell me about what had been happening for the past 6 months. The sexual abuse disguised as science tutoring. Evidence left on her mobile phone. Threatening messages from the teacher, and inappropriate photos and videos from him. In panic, Sophia had tried to burn her phone containing all the evidence using a lighter from her uniform pocket. That resulted in the bathroom fire. At first, it was just after-school tutoring. But gradually, Sophia's words were halting. I held her cold hands tightly. It wasn't just me, but I couldn't tell anyone. He said, he would ruin my future, my chances for recommended admission, my artistic talent, everything. Tear-filled eyes looked at me. Those eyes were filled with pain and fear she had been carrying alone. He would often call out to me after club activities. In the empty science room, saying he wanted to show me some materials. I was speechless at Sophia's confession. I couldn't help but blame myself for not noticing the abuse happening right in front of me, both as a doctor and as a mother. Night duty until late, training new doctors, increasing patients. All of it sounded like mere excuses. Why didn't I notice? Why couldn't I protect her? Waves of self-reproach washed over me. The investigation progressed rapidly. The despicable acts disguised as after-school tutoring. Girls forced into silence through threats and intimidation. The school's inadequate management system was also revealed one after another. Blind spots in security cameras. Lax management of after-school classroom use. The ineffective student counseling system. The problems were structural. Faculty meetings continued late into the night day after day. Angry shouts flew at parent meetings. Various speculations circulated on social media, and the media continued their stakeout at the school gates daily. The entire local community was wrapped in great shock and anxiety. Through all this, Sophia was slowly trying to reclaim her true self. "You know, I started drawing again," Sophia whispered one morning, as we shared breakfast together for the first time in a while. A month later, Mr. Wilson was arrested. The school announced a complete review of its management system. A support group for victims was also established. Among parents, a committee for preventing recurrence was formed. Efforts had begun to ensure such a tragedy would never repeat. Every Wednesday afternoon, we attend counseling together. About 3 weeks after starting counseling, Sophia opened her sketchbook for the first time in a while. Though her hands still trembled, she began drawing with sure strokes. "I found something I want to draw again." Those words brought tears to my eyes. Weekly counseling. My daughter's gradual steps forward. The presence of supportive friends. Everything was a step toward hope. In the counseling room's waiting area, we meet other victims' families. We who couldn't even face each other at first have now formed a small support group. "I'm really sorry about back then. but it's okay now. Because I have you, Mom." At those words, I held my daughter tightly. I felt this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. I felt truly proud of my daughter's strength as she moved forward, despite being hurt and suffering. I decided to return to the hospital. And this time, I volunteered to specialize in mental care for abused children. I wanted my experience to help others carrying similar pain. "Let's set up a new specialized outpatient clinic." I nodded firmly at my superior's suggestion. A place where I could use my experience in a new way. It would surely become a place of healing for me too. Outside the window, autumn winds rustled through the trees. Golden ginkgo leaves danced as they fell in the schoolyard. Gentle sunlight illuminated a mother and daughter's new step forward. Next month, Sophia will resume her art club activities. Her new sketch will be displayed on the club room wall. It was a drawing of a single flower on pure white paper. A small but strongly blooming flower. I believed that her drawings would someday become a light that heals someone's heart. And I'm certain that this experience will deepen the bond between mother and daughter even more. In the season when Christmas decorations adorned the streets, Sophia's exhibition was being held in a small gallery. Among the displayed works were pieces born from that incident. A ray of light breaking through darkness. A wounded butterfly spreading its wings. And the back view of a mother and daughter holding hands. Many visitors were local people who knew about the incident. In a corner of the exhibition room, the Victim Support Group's activity report was also being presented. Sophia's courage had become a catalyst for others with similar experiences to speak up. The school had established new counseling services and opened a 24-hour hotline. Regular training for faculty and staff had also begun. At my hospital, a specialized outpatient clinic for abuse victims had started. As a mother and as a doctor, I hope to turn this experience into strength for the next generation. "Mom, look," Sophia showed me her new sketchbook. "It's for my spring exhibition." There was a young tree reaching toward the light. Though there were scars on its trunk, new buds were beginning to grow strongly. Beyond the freezing season, our new story was surely moving forward.
I grew up thinking my mother had abandoned us. That is what he always told me. He told me my mother packed up and left us when I turned 2 years old. I grew up to resent and hate her, mainly because I saw how my father was working super long hours to make ends meet. I hated how my grandma basically had to raise me. When I would ask her about my mother, my grandma painted a picture of a bitter, spiteful, hateful, spoiled, entitled woman. I felt very justified in my anger and hate for her. That's what my family told me, and I had absolutely no reason to doubt them. A few weeks ago, I found her on social media while at my boyfriend's house, and I was so mad. She was out there living her best life. She is a cook chef in a Michelin star restaurant. She travels, has a huge apartment, and apparently is married to a gorgeous man. In a fit of rage, I DM'd her cruising her out for abandoning me to live her frivolous life and that karma would come to her. She obviously saw it. Instead of going off on me, she just asked me to meet her and that she felt like I had a right to express my anger to her in person and that she owed me as much. I was starstruck because my father said she never stood for the consequences of her actions. Without telling anyone I agreed. She invited me to this amazing restaurant. She paid an Uber for me and everything. It was very awkward at the beginning. I kept berating her. I was so angry. I cried a little. She just sat there and took it all in. I then asked her why she abandoned me. She then asked, this is all paraphrased. Do you really want to know the whole story? It is not nice and you will not like it. I am ready to be the bad guy in your head forever and keep my distance. I just kept pressing her. And then she told me the real story. This is again paraphrased and to my best recollection. She told me that my father and she met shortly before ending uni. At that time, my mother had said she did not want to stay in uni town. A few months after dating, my father told her that his landlord was evicting him because the apartment was needed for immediate family use. She offered him to stay while he found something else. Months passed, and he was not doing anything. Then she got a job offer in another country. She told my father that he could take over her apartment or come with her. They had this huge fight where my mother told him that she was not ready for the type of commitment he wanted. She wanted different things in life than him, and that as much as she loved him, that they weren't compatible. They stayed living together, and then one day she found out she was pregnant. She told me honestly that she was thinking of not having me. She did not feel ready to be a mom at 22. She did not feel maternal feelings. She said she was already struggling with depression and late-diagnosed ADHD. My father convinced her to have me. He said he would take me because he had a right to me, that he would go after her because that baby was also his. So she had me. She said that the time after birth was really bad. My father was dragging out the legal procedures. He refused to vacate the home. My mother said that while she felt love for me and that there were moments when she felt overjoyed, it was overshadowed by huge waves of suicidal ideation. She was scared that she was going to hurt me. She also showed me some of the court documents of that time that backed up her claims. In the end, she was so desperate that she agreed to stay with my father if he agreed to be the main caretaker. He did, but only half-assed. My mother then told me that it got so bad that she tried to commit suicide around my second birthday after a particularly nasty fight where my father admitted to having tampered with her birth control. She showed me the papers of the involuntary 72 hours commitment and the legal documents where she was found unfit to be a parent afterward, felt nauseous after all that. I would have not believed her. Hadn't she brought so much evidence with her? She then asked me what I meant in my message, that we were struggling. I told her that we were not exactly rich and that I was struggling to come up with the money to go to university in another city. She was bewildered and asked me what my father had been doing with the monthly payments she was making. I told her that we don't receive that money. Then she took out another stack of papers. Guys, she is sending child support every month. It is almost 3K every month. Edit, she is court mandated to pay me 1.5K. She doubled the payments out of her own will. She doesn't have to pay that amount. She was very concerned about this and told me she would talk to her lawyers as soon as possible to transfer the money to me directly. In the end, she apologized to me. She is very sorry to have put me through this. She was very sorry for not being stronger, and she was very sorry for letting me grow up the way I did. She was crying. I was crying. She then told me to take my time. She would contact me again regarding the payments and that it was up to me if I wanted to see her again, that she couldn't be the mother I wanted, but the least she could do is help me with anything that I need. I hugged her. I cried. She cried. I boxed up my food and she got me another Uber home. At home, my father was not there, so I went straight to bed and left early the next morning and am staying with my boyfriend. My whole life is a lie. I have found out that my mother never really abandoned me because she didn't want me, but because she tried to commit suicide and was deemed unfit to parent, and that my father basically baby-trapped my mother with me. After the post yesterday, I went snooping even more because I do not trust my father anymore. I found records of domestic abuse perpetrated by my father toward my mother. He was charged but never ended up going to jail, or did a very reduced sentence. This would have been when I was 2 after my mother was committed. I also found a restraining order filed by my mother against my father. It was so much worse than what she said. He did not only abuse her emotionally, but also physically. I am feeling so disgusted. I could just scream. I returned to my boyfriend again. My father has been calling a lot asking why I had spent so much time away from home. My excuse is a family emergency of my boyfriend. After yesterday's, I wanted to confront him, but now I don't feel safe. Any advice? My life was put upside down for the past weeks. TLDR is that I found out my mother did not abandon me, but tried to commit and was deemed an unfit parent due to her mental issues. She was giving my father $3K a month as child support. 1.5K was court-mandated, 1.5K was out of her own will. I also found court records of my father being charged with physically assaulting my mother on more than one occasion. So after staying for a while with my boyfriend, I decided to go home for a while because I wanted to get my legal documents and all of that. My father came back home and we talked a bit. I just asked him, by the way, "Did my mother never send you child support for me?" My father just scoffed theatrically and went on this rant about how courts are always accessible to the mother and how they told him he couldn't expect anything from her and so on. He pulled that whole story of him begging her for money when he didn't have enough money for my school supplies and her turning him down. I know this is a lie. My mother kept itemized records of all her money wires to my father every month since she had a job, meaning for over 15 years she has sent my father money. In the beginning, she sends him 400, then 600, then 1,000, and eventually 3,000. Then he kept talking, saying how hard it was, saying that he wished he would have gone after her more, but that the courts were not in his favor. He told me how even now we were barely able to go paycheck to paycheck. His rant was surreal. After he left to go, God knows where, I went snooping through his room where I found a stack of cash in his sock drawer. It was over 5K crammed into the back of his drawer. Things are getting worse. I feel so weird. I cannot describe the ick. I have all my documents and wrote my mother so we could maybe meet again. Should I just ghost my father? Caution very long what has happened in my other 2 posts. I found court documents that confirmed that my mother had been physically assaulted by my father. Upon further research, I determined that my father spent 3 months in jail for the assault. That was when I was 4 years old, which would explain why I do not remember anything at all about that. I met with him a few days ago. This is when I asked again about child support, posing the question like, "Hey Dad, did my mother never give you any child support for me?" He denied ever receiving child support, citing that courts will go easy on women. That same day, I snooped around and found a stack of cash with over 5K in one of his drawers. I did have the data to the household account, but the 3 monthly payment was never figured in that account. Also, I scouted for withdrawals for more than $100 at a time that maybe could explain the 5K stack, which was only composed of $100 bills. Nada, some background. Until posting here, I never realized that my relationship with my father was not normal. I explained more about his behavior in the previous, but as a bit of an explanation, he made me his accountant from a very young age. I had to keep track of expenses, etc. And so many times I was having panic attacks because we would not make it to the end of the month with the money on the account. So many times my father would berate me if I ever asked to go out, e.g. to the cinema, because we couldn't afford it. When he would allow me to go out, it was always attached to an endless list of requirements that were absurd. Again, let's take the example of the cinema. I would ask him a week prior and he'd say yes, but that I had to clean the house, drive grandma to the doctor, pick up Axie, leave some dinner ready for me, and many more. So that if I did not complete one single detail, like not bringing out the trash, he would pick up a fight with me, making me feel guilty and thus staying home. He would constantly make me feel worthless, saying I would not survive in uni, that I was not talented to do this, that I was not good enough to do that. He's extremely reactive. One time in the car, I teased him that I would be for the other soccer team tonight, and he kicked me out of the car, making me walk home alone. There are so many more examples. I thought it was merely my fault or that other dad were also like this, but suffice to say, it is not normal. What happened now? I did in fact contact my mother after finding all this out. I confronted her with the newfound information. She admitted that it was quite bad and she did fear for her life. My father apparently had friends in law enforcement that were following my mother and making her life impossible, giving her tickets for the most inconsequential stuff, pulling her over for random controls, everything possible to intimidate her or to find dirt on her. My father put her to the ultimatum of just singing over without a fight, or he would make her any my life impossible. My mother told me that he had been abusing her since I was born, as early as 1 week postpartum. So when my father uttered the ultimatum, she felt hopeless and just tried to end it. It did not work, and after she was released, my father served her and battled for full custody. Because she was deemed unfit to parent, it was really easy for him. She told me the court actually went pretty hard on her. About a year after that, my mother attempted to establish visitation with me. She reached out to my father, who invited her over. He told her that she could be in my life if she agreed to be together with him again. My mother told him no, and then a fight ensued. That was the night he assaulted her. He assaulted her so badly that she wound up in the hospital. In the hospital, seeing her wounds, they had to report it. So he was sentenced to a year but only served 3 months. At that time, custody of me was with my grandmother. My father resumed custody of me at the time of being released. I was able to corroborate all this after reaching out to my aunt, who has not spoken to our family in 10 years. My Aunt Maya basically documented my mother's abuse. She took pictures of her bruises and recordings of my father screaming and threatening her. She told me that she testified against my father in court and that she could just back up everything my mother said because he was the same to her. I insisted on seeing the pictures and recordings. My aunt was resistant to this, but a part of me did not want to accept that this was reality. So yeah, my father is a fucking monster. I told my mother about everything monetarily that I had found out. She said that legally there was not much we could do, but she spoke with her lawyer, and seeing as I am 18, she started the motion to start transferring me my child support money. She said that for the time being she would give me 1.5K monthly while she still had to pay my dad the money. As soon as the process is greenlit, I am going to get it all. She also agreed to pay for my matriculation fees, as well as for the deposit and first month's rent of an apartment in my uni town, so that I could be as independent as possible. For now, I have only sent in my applications a couple of weeks ago, so I should get any news on that front latest by September. We decided that confronting my father was not a good idea for neither of us. So we decided on telling my father that my boyfriend's parents invited me to vacation, but he does not know I am gay. So we plan on telling him that this is the last vacation to say goodbye to my friend. I have talked to my boyfriend and his parents. They did not even hesitate and immediately said yes. They now know everything and support me 100%. So my mother and his parents are sending us for 2 weeks to a nearby country where they have a summer house. I told my father about the plans, and he said that as long as his parents were paying, that it was all right. He did tell me that I had to help him with a million things before leaving again, so I am already seeing a fight on the horizon, but I have managed to get all my important documents and open a bank account thanks to my aunt's help. So on Thursday, I am officially leaving for 2 weeks, and I pray things to get resolved beforehand. I am taking all important stuff with me already in case things go south fast. Anyways, this has been an extremely difficult time, and I feel overwhelmed with this all. So please don't reach out, probing me for an update. I will update when I feel it is right and when I feel like I can do it. This has been very helpful. Without you guys, I would have never noticed that I had also been abused and that there is most likely more to the story, even more than what I have found out. It has also proven very therapeutic to write this all down in a somewhat orderly fashion. So thank you so much for all the support and advice. Update 1. I am not in the US. Don't speculate with us laws and standards. They do not apply. I am the original op. I saw that Eucalajamix had posted a recompilation of my posts on this sub, and I figured this is the best way to reach out to all of you who have written me and are curious as to what is happening. This is the link to the original threat here with all the older updates. Things went south fast. Wednesday night, the night before I left, my father picked up a fight with me for not taking his car for an oil change. He called me everything under the sun, saying I am selfish and a brat, that he raised me better. He then had my grandmother come and say how disappointed they were, that I was clearly not mature enough to leave for a holiday, let alone move away for university. They held me awake till 4 under the guise of a family meeting, which was basically just a reprimanding session of all I had done wrong in my life. And to be honest, I was demoralized. I was ugly, crying, and feeling awful. Thankfully, my boyfriend called because I had not answered several texts of his. He helped me transport all my stuff while my father was sleeping, and I left without telling him bye. He texted me around 1 p.m., and my father was acting like everything was normal. So the 2 weeks passed very quickly. I got a mail that I got into a university that has a very good program for political science, so I accepted and put myself on the waiting list for university accommodation. Then shit blew up. My mother suddenly stopped giving my father half the money, so she was only paying what she was legally obligated to pay. My father was losing it. He began calling screaming at me to come home at once, then calling me crying to tell me that the bitch of my mother had reappeared and was suing him more, and now we did not have enough money to pay for the mortgage. I called my mother to ask if she was actually suing him. She said no and said that she had just gone through the courts to start paying me directly instead of my father, which was granted. Then my grandma started texting me, saying I had to come home right away because my father had had a cardiac arrest. Obviously, I went back home with my boyfriend, only to find our house in literal shambles. There were beer cans, string liquor stuff, and cigarettes everywhere. Everyone that was betting that my father was using all the money on drugs and lavish stuff. Hey, congratulations, you were right. Apparently, when I left, my father decided to have a huge party. He invited all these friends that he made in fancy bars. I know that because the lady that was in the hospital with my dad, his GF apparently. She did not know about me. She kept talking about our house as his summer residence. I asked her a few questions. She answered. She is actually pretty sweet, but put off by my father now that she knows how he lied. So apparently, my father would take the 3K and spend them almost fully on appearing to be richer. He had bought some clothing pieces that were high quality. He would hang out in these fancy hotel sky lounges where he met his GF then, would take her and her friends out to expensive restaurants and clubs. She did not fully admit it, but insinuated that they did coke often during those outings. Much like the party that leads my dad to odd. It was not only cocaine that they did. I also think an amphetamine. Anyway, I thanked her and told her that the money was not my father's and she had been lied to. She stayed till my father came to and we could bring him home, which is when she dumped him. And then I broke it to him. I was leaving. He lost his shit. He punched me. He broke my nose. I was really afraid. He was not even fully recovered. In the hospital, I told the nurse how it happened, and the police got involved. My mother took me in the very next day. She is helping me with all the legal things regarding my father. She helped me move out, helped me move cities. It all happened very, very fast. My boyfriend has been staying over because I am very afraid. My father has been blocked, but I have been getting threatening emails. So that is that. It is good and bad. Update 2. I am Alex's boyfriend. Alex's father attacked him on Sep 19th. He almost passed. Yesterday, he was finally moved from the ICU into a standard room. Legal procedures against his father have been brought up, so I cannot disclose anything. I will update you if anything changes Alex's health. Final update. My father died in the midst of our lawsuit. He had brutally attacked me because I was going to leave him and the CS checks that he had been blowing on drugs and women would stop with my departure. Last year, my whole world crumbled when I found out that my mother had not left us. My father had abused her and made it impossible for her to take me. He has made my life absolutely miserable. I have detailed this over the past few months here. After I was let out of the hospital, my mother and I got 2 amazing lawyers, one for the assault case and the other for the misappropriation of the money. The process for the CS case was quick. He had to pack back 50 of the money given to him in the past 3 years to me directly, no further fines. However, the assault case spiraled. It was found out that he was going to attempt to plead not guilty in the case of temporary insanity. He had detailed his plan to get away with this to his GF, who is not an awful human, and showed the police what she had. So it went from assault to attempted murder. GF leaving him owing a bunch of money, looking at a hefty prison sentence, and no more money to bail himself out. He took his life on Friday. I was numb the whole week, but today the realization washed over me. I am finally free. I don't have to look over my shoulder. I don't flinch when I hear steps. I don't have anxiety while checking my phone.
Catherine Winston's steps felt heavier than usual as she climbed the worn stairs of St. Anne's Church in Annapolis, Maryland. Sunday morning service was her most cherished time of the week, but today, something felt different. "Grandma, look! My new ballet shoes." Her granddaughter Olivia's voice cut through the gentle spring air as she bounded up the stairs. Catherine couldn't help but smile. The 5-year-old girl in her brand-new pink ballet shoes was as light as a sparrow. "Oh, how lovely! But remember, no running in church." "Yes, ma'am." Behind Olivia appeared Catherine's son David and his wife Rachel. The dark circles under David's eyes betrayed his usual fatigue. His middle management position at an IT company seemed to be slowly draining his vitality. "Mom, could you pick up and drop off Olivia this afternoon?" "Of course, dear." Catherine answered without hesitation. Even at 63, she hadn't lost the decisiveness from her days as a vice president at an investment bank. Since losing her husband 10 years ago, her granddaughter had become her reason for living. Inside the church, Rachel's parents, Joseph and Margaret Brown, were already seated. Joseph's once proud bearing as a real estate tycoon was gone, his shoulders noticeably stooped. The bankruptcy with its $3 million debt had stripped him of everything. "Rachel, about this weekend." Just as Margaret started to approach her daughter, the hymn began. Catherine observed the Browns from the corner of her eye. Margaret's outfit was still overly flashy. It was clear that their lavish lifestyle, unchanged even after bankruptcy, was leading to further financial ruin. After the service, Catherine watched her son and daughter-in-law among the people chatting with coffee in hand in the church garden facing Maryland Avenue. David's shoulders carried the heavy burden of his in-laws' debt. He had missed out on a promotion just last month. "Grandma, will you come to my ballet recital?" Olivia came running over. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm looking forward to it." As Catherine hugged her granddaughter, she pondered the child's future. All her weekend charity work was for children in situations like this. The group headed to Whole Foods Market near the church for lunch ingredients, as was their custom. David's aging SUV glided into the spacious parking lot. As they got out of the car, Catherine caught a glimpse of anxiety on Rachel's face. "David, has work settled down?" Catherine called out to her son. "Yes, managing somehow." His curt reply clearly masked deep exhaustion. Pushing the shopping cart, Catherine observed her family. Rachel, once a kindergarten teacher, still had a knack for planning meals that children loved. Lately, though, a dark shadow seemed to lurk behind her smile. "Rachel, pot roast tonight?" "Yes, it's David's favorite." On the surface, they appeared to be a harmonious couple. But Catherine sensed something was off. The tension was particularly noticeable when Rachel spoke with her parents, more so than before. "Hey, Grandma." Olivia tugged at Catherine's hand in the produce section. "This broccoli looks like a bunny, doesn't it?" Catherine's heart warmed at the innocent smile. Yet she couldn't help but sense the precarious adult circumstances swirling around this child. No one could have predicted that this Sunday shopping trip would be their last moment of peace. On Tuesday, the Annapolis Mall parking lot was bustling with shoppers drawn out by the spring weather. At 2 p.m., Catherine led Olivia by the hand through the supermarket's automatic doors. "Grandma, can I get ice cream?" "Yes, but just one." Shopping before ballet lessons had become their secret pleasure. Catherine held her granddaughter's hand while checking the shopping list David had entrusted to her. "We'll get the ice cream last, okay?" "Okay." As they were making good progress through the vegetable and bread sections, Catherine's phone rang. The display showed David. "Just a moment, Olivia." The phone call lasted mere seconds, just a minor addition to the shopping list from her son. But those seconds changed everything. "Olivia." When Catherine turned around, her granddaughter was gone. They hadn't even reached the ice cream aisle yet. "Olivia." Fighting back panic, Catherine scanned her surroundings. Despite it being a weekday afternoon, the store was crowded. But there was no sign of the familiar pink dress. "Excuse me, have you seen a little girl in a pink dress?" Catherine asked a nearby store employee. "I'm sorry, I haven't noticed anyone like that." Trying to control her panic, Catherine ran through the store. Ice cream aisle, candy aisle, restrooms. No sign of Olivia anywhere. "Attention shoppers, we are looking for a 5-year-old girl in a pink dress." As the announcement echoed through the store, worst-case scenarios flashed through Catherine's mind. 15 minutes later, her trembling fingers pressed the phone buttons. "David. Olivia is." The police arrived 10 minutes later. Uniformed officers quickly sprang into action, checking security camera footage and beginning interviews. But no decisive leads were found. Olivia had vanished completely in the crowd near the checkout counters. The security cameras showed no suspicious individuals. It was as if she had dissolved into thin air. "Mom." David's voice echoed through the chaotic supermarket as he rushed in from work. Behind him stood Rachel, her face ashen. "If I hadn't answered David's phone call." Catherine's voice trembled. "Mother, please don't." Rachel's voice caught in her throat. But there was something odd about her tone. Looking back later, it might have been closer to guilt than fear. The police search quickly expanded that day. The city of Annapolis was consumed by news of Olivia Winston's disappearance. Local news stations ran special programs, reporting daily on the kidnapping of a wealthy family's daughter. David immediately took leave from work, spending every day coordinating with police and searching. Meanwhile, Rachel often sat silently at home. Most peculiar was the attitude of Rachel's parents. "We'll do whatever we can." Margaret's voice on the phone was unnaturally calm. The investigation had begun to stall. Multiple analyses of security footage yielded no new discoveries, and witness testimonies provided no decisive leads. Interviews with supermarket employees produced no significant clues. A week passed, then a month. Catherine attended St. Anne's Church daily. There, she continued to pray for her granddaughter's safety. Though she maintained the composure of her former role as an investment bank vice president, tears flowed freely during her prayers. 5 years later, a package arrived at Catherine's mansion on Maryland Avenue. A brown envelope with no return address. Inside was a single worn videotape. That day, Catherine had just returned from church as usual. When she picked up the package from her doorstep, her intuition told her something was coming. But she never imagined the shock that awaited. Could it be? Her hands trembled as she connected the VCR to the TV in her study. The screen glowed blue, and the video began. A space like an old warehouse. A large decorative yacht panel on the wall. And a girl in a white dress. Olivia, who should now be 10 years old, smiled at the camera. "Grandma, I'm safe." Catherine caught her breath. It was definitely Olivia's voice. But something was off. Unnatural, as if reading from a script. The yacht panel on the wall behind her, that decorative design seemed familiar somehow. The video ended after 30 seconds. What remained were countless questions and a faint glimmer of hope. That evening, Catherine visited a private investigator's office. "You want to reinvestigate a 5-year-old case?" "Yes, but this time with this as a lead." The detective's expression changed after watching the video. "This yacht panel. Annapolis Harbor." "Yes, I thought so too. Annapolis Harbor. The iconic location of the city, lined with numerous yacht clubs. And a key development area for Joseph Brown's real estate company before its bankruptcy." "What about security camera records?" "Most from 5 years ago have been deleted." However, the detective opened an old laptop. "There's an interesting testimony from the warehouse district at the harbor. Mike Donovan, a janitor. Since 5 years ago, he's noticed signs of activity in a supposedly unused warehouse." Catherine drew in a sharp breath. At the same time, her keen mind began working. What about the Browns' movements? They've maintained an unnaturally high standard of living after bankruptcy. Especially Mrs. Brown's shopping habits. "Let me know what I can investigate." Catherine's voice had regained its composure. Over the next few days, she mobilized all her connections. Former banking colleagues, real estate industry acquaintances, and police contacts from her charity work. All the information gradually but surely pointed in one direction. Suspicious money flows. The Browns' real estate transactions. And most concerning, Rachel's changes. Rachel, whom Catherine saw every Sunday at church, had visibly lost weight. Her former gentle smile was gone, replaced by an expression of constant fear. Even David seemed unaware of his wife's transformation. "I hear you've hired a private investigator." One day, Margaret called unexpectedly. Her voice carried a coldness unimaginable from her usually mild-mannered self. "Yes, we have new leads." Catherine maintained her composure. "You should give up. For your granddaughter's sake." The words could be taken as a threat. The next day, Catherine met with the detective again. He had made an important discovery. "Mrs. Winston, these are insurance claim documents." The papers the detective presented showed records of life insurance inquiries the Browns had secretly made immediately after Olivia's disappearance. The amount, $1 million. This insurance, actually 1 week before. The disappearance was when it was taken out. Catherine closed her eyes. All the pieces were starting to fit together. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. The warehouse janitor Donovan had left a crucial testimony. Every Wednesday at midnight, he had witnessed someone entering the warehouse with large shopping bags. That person was Rachel. Catherine's voice shook. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, a girl in a white dress was being forced to record another video message. in front of the yacht panel on the wall. At the warehouse district of Annapolis Harbor, in the early summer twilight, Catherine sat in her car listening to the detective's explanation. Beyond the old warehouse complex, an orange sunset was about to sink. Donovan's testimony is reliable. Every Wednesday at 11 p.m. Mrs. Rachel always goes to this warehouse. Why won't the police act? Insufficient evidence. But look at this. The detective handed over old architectural plans. This warehouse actually has a basement. In the 1980s, Joseph Brown's company did renovation work. Catherine's eyes narrowed. Yes, everything was connected. Brown Real Estate's hidden assets. The debt forced upon his daughter and son-in-law. And the $1 million insurance policy. Rachel is being coerced by her parents. Catherine's voice was tinged with sadness. Just then, her cell phone rang. It was from David. Mom, Rachel. Rachel has turned herself in. In the interrogation room at Maryland State Police Headquarters, Rachel began to tell everything. What happened that day 5 years ago at the supermarket? I was being threatened by my parents. Rachel's trembling voice was recorded. It was a desperate plan by the debt-ridden Browns. $3 million in bankruptcy debt. A repayment plan using life insurance money. And an innocent life sacrificed for it. Father gave me no choice. He said if I didn't cooperate, he would put pressure on David's company. The supermarket incident had been meticulously planned. Even the phone call to Catherine was orchestrated. In the crowd, Rachel led Olivia out through the back door to her parents' waiting car. Olivia is in the basement. Rachel's confession triggered an emergency police response. The warehouse raid took place at midnight. SWAT team members at the front line rushed down the stairs to the basement. There, Margaret stood using Olivia as a shield. Joseph was behind her. But the situation took an unexpected turn. Grandma. I'm okay now. 10-year-old Olivia spoke with dignity. Grandma Margaret protected me. Facts revealed in later interrogations showed that Margaret had resisted her husband's deranged plan until the end. The basement was furnished with Olivia's study desk and bookshelves, with her drawings posted on the walls. I am the worst mother. Rachel wept. But I visited Olivia every week. Taught her studies. It was also a story of twisted love. A faint light of humanity remaining amid madness and sin. The sentences were handed down considering the circumstances. 20 years for Joseph. A suspended sentence for Margaret. And Rachel, with mitigating factors considered, avoided prison time on the condition of participating in a rehabilitation program. The following spring, in St. Anne's Church Garden, Olivia wore new ballet shoes. After the blank period, she had begun dancing again. Beautiful. Catherine smiled watching her granddaughter. Though sessions with trauma care specialists continued, Olivia's recovery exceeded doctors' expectations. However, it was by no means an easy journey. Grandma, can we go see Mom? Rachel, receiving counseling at the rehabilitation facility, was allowed monthly visits. Of course. Catherine sighed deeply as she answered. It took time for David to accept his wife's betrayal. but he couldn't ignore his daughter's wishes. He too prayed every Sunday at church. "Dad, look!" Olivia demonstrated a pirouette in the church garden. The scene was like that day 5 years ago. "Well done." Beside Catherine, David quietly wiped away tears. 5 lost years. That time can never be recovered. But this family had begun weaving new bonds. The church bells rang, announcing Sunday service. Olivia took Catherine's hand. "Grandma, let's go." The two began walking toward the church. The spring sunlight gently embraced their shadows. Sometimes, the brightest light is found in the deepest darkness. This family's story had only just begun. Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. I stepped out of my house to begin my daily gardening routine. The morning air, filled with the fragrance of roses, felt pleasant against my skin. In my well-tended garden, more than 20 varieties of roses bloomed proudly. The white houses of our neighborhood gleamed in the morning sun, while birdsong echoed through the quiet residential streets. My name is Carol Hamilton. This year, at 65, I retired from my position as a cardiac surgeon. I'm spending my quiet retirement years in this colonial-style house of 50 years. Located in the Green Hills district of Chicago's suburbs, our home, with its deep green window frames and crimson door, is a place of memories built over 40 years with my husband, George. My reflection in the mirror shows gentle age-appropriate wrinkles, a silver bob, and black-rimmed glasses. Today, as always, I'm wearing my usual attire, a pastel blouse, carefully pressed slacks, and understated pearl accessories. The meticulous habits I developed as a physician remain part of who I am, even in retirement. In the garden, there's a special space for my beloved granddaughter, Olivia. A wooden swing set, a small sandbox, and a picnic table. On weekends, this place fills with her laughter. The greenhouse blooms with seasonal flowers, and the flower beds are planted with colorful flora. Inside, cherished family photographs adorn the mantel above the living room fireplace. Classical furniture fills the room, and large windows overlook the well-maintained garden. The kitchen is clean and orderly, with Olivia's special stepping stool in place. In the master bedroom, photos of my husband still hang, and the subdued color scheme brings peace to my heart. George, who passed away 10 years ago, and I supported each other's careers while enjoying gardening together on holidays. We raised our only son, David, as a team. David followed in his father's footsteps to become a doctor, and we shared a proud bond as parent and child. However, 2 years ago, we lost him in a sudden accident. What helped me overcome that grief was the presence of David's wife, Mary, and my granddaughter Olivia. Mary and I had built a good relationship from the start, and we maintain our connection even after losing my son. I feel our bond through Olivia has grown even stronger. My relationship with Olivia, in particular, gives my life meaning. Every weekend on Grandma's Day, we cook together and enjoy gardening. Her expressions when telling me about school events are just like her father's. As a grandmother, I feel that being able to give unconditional love is the greatest happiness I can experience now. My weekday routine is regular. I wake at 6 for meditation to start the day. Garden maintenance begins at 7, followed by housework and reading at 9. From noon, I participate in volunteer activities, and afternoons are for hobbies. I start dinner preparations at 5 in the evening and begin preparing for bed at 8. This quiet daily routine keeps my heart peaceful. And then weekends. Special time with Olivia begins. We cook together, play in the garden, and sometimes work on homework. We look through family albums, sharing memories of David and George. Such peaceful daily moments wove our happy times together. Everyone believed these peaceful days would continue forever. No one could have imagined that everything would change on that Sunday morning. One Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang at its usual time. Opening the door revealed Mary and Olivia's smiling faces. This was our small ritual marking the beginning of the weekend. "You look well this week, Olivia." "Yes." "Are we making cookies today?" "Of course." "Let's try a new recipe today." Mary watched us fondly before saying, "I'll pick her up at 6, and leaving. In the kitchen, Olivia immediately put on her favorite pink apron. Imitating my movements, she began measuring ingredients with practiced ease. The sweet aroma of chocolate chip cookies filled the kitchen. "Did Dad like these cookies too?" Olivia's sudden question made me pause for a moment. Yes, chocolate chip was his favorite. "I love them too. I'm like Dad, aren't I?" Memories of David suddenly tightened my chest. But watching Olivia smile happily before me spread warmth through my heart. After baking cookies, we headed to the garden as usual. Wearing small gardening gloves, Olivia carefully tended to the roses under my guidance. Her childlike charm showed when she would chase after butterflies. Her profile while watering the plants together looked just like David's from years ago. In our area, our lifestyle was warmly watched over by the community. I served as president of the gardening club and taught gardening knowledge at monthly regular meetings. At the senior center, I volunteered twice a week as a medical consultant, utilizing my experience as a doctor. At Green Hills Private Elementary School, I was actively involved as a PTA advisor. The health lectures drawing from my experience as a school physician were well received by parents. The school Olivia attended was a prestigious institution with a lush green campus. Under their small class education policy, they carefully nurtured each student's talents. Especially in the drama club held after school on Wednesdays, Olivia showed enough talent to be assigned leading roles. She also excelled in science and art, earning trust from her teachers. My daily routine remained regular. Every morning at 7, I went out to the garden with the sunrise. While tending to the roses, I reflected on memories with my husband and days with my son. Daily joys included neighborhood children greeting me on their way to school and interactions with neighbors who would bring seasonal flowers. Mary and I frequently kept in touch by phone. "Mom, can you attend next week's school event?" "Of course. I'm looking forward to seeing Olivia's performance." In this upscale residential area of Chicago's suburbs, traditional family values and intergenerational community connections were still carefully preserved. Under the refreshing early summer climate, the garden roses reached full bloom, and the trees' greenery deepened day by day. Indoors, the living room clock ticked quietly, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Sunlight from the garden gently illuminated the well-organized bookshelf and clean kitchen utensils. Family photos on the walls were testament to our history. The colorful roses, birdsong, and leaves rustling in the breeze added color to this peaceful daily life. However, lately, I had noticed something different about Mary. Phone conversations had become shorter, and she sometimes seemed like she wanted to say something. Olivia occasionally showed unnatural expressions too. But I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Sunday morning began with the usual tranquility. The clock showed 7 a.m., and the temperature was pleasant. The garden roses sparkled with morning dew, blooming beautifully in the early summer sunlight. Pearl-like dewdrops scattered across the lawn, and the refreshing chirping of birds breathed life into this quiet morning. I had been tending to the roses since early morning. While thinking about new seedlings to plant, I carefully removed dead leaves one by one. This task always brought me peace. The roses that George and I had grown together continued to bloom as proof of our love. At 10 a.m., slightly earlier than scheduled, Olivia arrived. "Grandma, can we tend to the roses together today too?" Olivia ran into the garden with an unusually bouncy voice. "Yes, of course. We'll plant new seedlings too." She put on her small gardening gloves and eagerly began digging soil beside me. Her touch when handling rose buds was as delicate as if handling treasures. Her face lighting up whenever butterflies flew by was utterly adorable. The morning passed peacefully like this. After tending to the roses, we prepared a light lunch together. While making Olivia's favorite tuna sandwiches, I listened to stories about school and her friends. After lunch, we took commemorative photos with the blooming roses as a backdrop. I hoped she would look back on these memories when she grew older. However, that tranquility was suddenly shattered. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I first heard sirens in the distance. Just as I thought they would pass by, the sound grew louder until it stopped in front of our house. Looking out, I saw 2 police cars pulled up to the curb, and 4 officers and 1 child welfare worker stepping out. At that moment, an ominous feeling ran through my heart. However, I couldn't have imagined what was about to happen. 2 officers approached me from both sides as I worked in the rose garden. One remained on standby while another moved toward Olivia. An unusual tension hung in the air under the blue sky. "Carol Hamilton, you're under arrest on suspicion of abuse." Those words didn't seem real. It felt like a nightmare. The gardening trowel fell from my hands, making a dull sound on the soil. "This is a mistake. I would never hurt my granddaughter." Despite my desperate protests, cold handcuffs were placed on my wrists. Their metallic sound forced the reality of the situation upon me. In my confused mind, I felt the trust one had built as a doctor, grandmother, and community member crumbling like a sand castle. And then, at that moment, I caught sight of Olivia's expression a few meters away. It was a meaningful smirk I had never seen before. It would take a little more time to understand the meaning of that smile. Neighbors began gathering in the street. Some peered through windows, others started recording with smartphones. Small whispers could be heard from among people who had always treated me with respect. How could this be? Unbelievable, the gentle Dr. Hamilton. Each voice stabbed deeply into my heart. Just before being pushed into the police car, I looked at Olivia one last time. Her thin smile made her seem like a different person. The innocent granddaughter who had been tending roses with me this morning was nowhere to be seen. And so, my peaceful daily life crumbled away along with the gloriously blooming roses. Lowered from the police car's back seat, I was led into the police station. The cold sensation of handcuffs still lingered on my wrists. The smell of disinfectant grew stronger as we walked down the hallway. This building had a cold atmosphere unlike a hospital. As a doctor who had treated countless patients over 40 years, I never dreamed I would be brought to the police as a suspect. The interrogation room was smaller than I had imagined. A heavy iron table and chairs were fixed in the space surrounded by gray walls. A one-way mirror was embedded in the wall, and a small recording device's red light blinked on the ceiling. An old water cooler stood in the corner. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened, and a middle-aged male detective entered. Holding a thick file, he sat down in the chair looking tired. His eyes held a sharp gaze that came from years of investigative experience. As soon as he sat at the desk, he began in a quiet but intimidating tone. Multiple bruises have been confirmed on Olivia's body. At those words, I felt my heart stop for a moment. Blood drained from my face. Cold sweat seeped into my palms. That's impossible. I would never. Words failed me. Every weekend spent with Olivia. Tending roses, baking cookies, sometimes helping with homework. In all those precious moments, hurting my granddaughter was unimaginable. Happy times until this morning ran through my mind like a fleeting dream. As a doctor, you knew how to make bruises less noticeable, didn't you? The detective's words cut through my heart like an icy blade. His gaze held a coldness that seemed to have already decided I was guilty. Wait, please. This must be some mistake. Despite my desperate defense, the detective began laying out evidence on the desk. Olivia's medical report. Photographs documenting bruises on her body. And witness statements from neighbors. Each piece of evidence seemed to slowly crumble my life away. The location and size of bruises in the photographs did appear intentional. However, I hadn't caused them. Even as I insisted this, the detective's expression remained unchanged. The second hand of the clock on the interrogation room wall ticked forward with abnormally loud sounds. Those sounds seemed to echo as if cornering me. In this surreal situation, my mind was filled with confusion. Why were there such bruises on Olivia? Why was I being suspected? And what was the meaning of that last smirk? Questions swirled and vanished in my mind. Outside, events were already rapidly unfolding. Local news programs had begun reporting on the case as suspected abuse of private elementary school student. The footage showed my arrest in the Rose Garden, with detailed coverage of my background and community activities. Ironically, my previous good deeds seemed to make the shock of the incident even greater. On social media, my name and photo spread instantly. Various speculations flew around as shocking case by trusted doctor. Comments like, was her usual good behavior just an act? And a cunning method using her position as a doctor appeared one after another without any basis. Weekly magazines were already flooding the police station with interview requests. The gardening club I had been active in for years issued a statement calling for suspension of activities. The gardening discussions and smiles we shared at monthly meetings might never return. I wondered how the roses I had carefully nurtured were doing now. The neighborhood's reaction was sharply divided. Some supporters believed in my innocence based on years of friendship. Others condemned it as cunning abuse utilizing my position as a doctor. Faces that once exchanged greetings now looked at me with suspicious eyes. And this division created deep rifts in the community. I heard that the senior center had already requested my resignation from volunteer activities. How many people had I counseled as a medical consultant? That relationship of trust was about to crumble in an instant. The achievements and reputation I had built up seemed to be crumbling like a sand castle. The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room mercilessly illuminated my face. In the reflected light, I could see myself in the mirror. The peaceful expression I had worn while tending roses just hours ago was gone, replaced by deep lines of fatigue and confusion. Dark circles had appeared under my eyes, my cheeks were hollow, and my hair was disheveled. I looked like a different person. In this narrow space, I desperately traced my memories. Weekends with Olivia. Changes in Mary's behavior. And that unnatural smirk. Everything must be some mistake. But what that something was, I couldn't yet see. Only one thing was certain in this confusion, the fact that I had never hurt my granddaughter. On the third morning in detention, my attorney Sarah Watson appeared with new evidence. Her expression carried tension, indicating some important discovery. Dr. Hamilton, interesting footage was found on the school's security cameras. Sarah placed her tablet in front of me. The screen showed a hallway in Green Hills Private Elementary School. In the dim after-school lighting, Mary was visible with an unknown man. The man wore an expensive suit and exuded the typical air of a real estate developer. This man is James Morrison, a real estate developer. He's been pushing forward with large-scale redevelopment plans in this area recently. The footage continued. Olivia followed behind them at a trot. They entered an unused classroom. Though their conversation wasn't recorded, Olivia could be seen repeatedly performing the same actions. As if practicing a performance. Furthermore, we found this evidence. Sarah spread new documents on the table. Receipts for special makeup supplies. Professional cosmetics and tools for creating artificial bruises were listed in detail. All had been purchased with Mary's credit card. Next shown were Mary's financial records. There were traces of multiple transfers from Morrison Development Corporation over the past 6 months. The amounts were too large to be considered normal transactions. And this is the decisive evidence. What Sarah showed was a draft of real estate transactions. Detailed plans to convert the area, including my home, into a large commercial facility. However, there was one obstacle to its realization: my land rights inherited through succession. Mary would have been in a position to gain asset management rights as Olivia's guardian if you were arrested. All the points were slowly connecting. However, the most important testimony was still to come. The next day, a meeting with Olivia was permitted. With a plainclothes officer present, my granddaughter began speaking through tears. Mom said, this was special acting. In a small voice, Olivia gradually revealed the truth. What kind of acting did you practice? Sarah asked gently. Practicing scary faces, and practicing laughing at the end. Olivia's confession unraveled all the mysteries. Every night, Uncle James made me practice. How to make smiles, how to show sad faces, everything. Her words pained my heart. I gently stroked her head and said, "It must have been hard. Such a heavy burden on such small shoulders." I loved spending weekends with Grandma. But if I didn't do what Mom said? Olivia's voice trembled. When I showed that last smile, I was really about to cry. "I know. You were very brave. I'm proud of you for finally telling the truth." A year has passed since then. Our lives gradually but surely returned to their normal course. The weekend cooking classes resumed, and Olivia enjoyed cooking more enthusiastically than before. "Grandma, I've perfected these cookies." Your skills have really improved. I want to teach my school friends next time." The gardening club activities also resumed. Though there was some initial awkwardness, the members who learned the truth welcomed me back warmly. "Dr. Hamilton, the contests weren't the same without your rose garden." "Yes, it's all thanks to everyone's support." Volunteer work at the senior center regained its former vitality. "We're so glad you're back, Doctor." Their words warmed my heart. 6 months after the verdict, a letter arrived from Mary, Mom, and Olivia. "What I did was an unforgivable mistake that I can never make up for. Blinded by greed, I lost sight of what was truly important. I don't expect forgiveness. But someday." The end of the letter was blurred with tears. Mary soon moved to another city. Though custody of Olivia was transferred to me, it wasn't what I had wanted. "Olivia, you can tell me anytime if you want to see Mom." "Yes, but right now, I want to stay here with you, Grandma." One spring afternoon, in the garden full of blooming roses, Olivia said with a curious expression, "Grandma, these roses are blooming more beautifully than last year." "Yes, they've grown stronger and more beautiful after overcoming hard times. Just like us." I spontaneously hugged Olivia. She smiled, looking slightly embarrassed. "Grandma, I'll never lie again. I promise." "Yes, and no one will ever make you lie again." In the garden filled with the fragrance of roses, we made our new vow. The little actress who had been manipulated by adults' desires was gone. In her place was my precious granddaughter who had regained her honest smile. Trust with the community was gradually restored as well. If anything, our bonds seem to have deepened through this experience. Perhaps there are truths that can only be seen through being wounded. "Doctor, would you serve as a judge for this year's gardening contest?" "Of course. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's gardens." Our former peaceful daily life returned to us, taking on slightly different forms. It's not exactly the same as before. But it's a new daily life bound by deeper ties forged through overcoming trials. Like roses blooming more beautifully after enduring a harsh winter. My name is Caitlin Walker. It's been almost 10 years since I started working as a librarian at the Greenwich Library. The time I spend walking between the shelves arranging books is my moment of bliss. I especially love the children's story time. Seeing young eyes light up with stories makes me feel I made the right career choice. It was at this library where I had a fateful encounter. 10 years ago, a man rushed in just before closing time. His name was Matthew, and he was looking for architecture reference books. At the time, He was a promising young employee making his mark at a major local construction company. Now he's continued his path of success as the company's vice president. We got married, and now we live in an upscale neighborhood in Greenwich, Connecticut. This town is a wonderful place where old traditions harmonize with new culture. It's an ideal community with high educational standards and many art lovers. We live in a house with a spacious garden, the three of us with our 8-year-old daughter Amy. Amy has grown into a smart child who loves books, just like me. Though only in 2nd grade, she already reads books well beyond her age level and borrows several new ones every time she visits the library. Her kind and thoughtful nature makes her popular among her classmates. She's especially fond of her father Matthew, and they have a habit of always taking walks in the park on holidays. Matthew has a sister named Samantha. She's married to Stephen, a renowned doctor in this area. As a full-time housewife living an elegant life, she actively participates in PTA and charity activities, highly regarded in the community as an ideal wife and mother. Samantha's husband Stephen keeps busy as a mid-career physician at Greenwich Hospital. Though work consumes most of his time, leaving little for family, he's a sincere person who deeply trusts his wife and daughter and puts family first, earning strong respect from those around him. Then there's Lily, Samantha and Stephen's daughter. At 10 years old, she possesses remarkable piano talent. Well-mannered with a mature demeanor, she consistently places among the top in local piano competitions. Notably, she has the blue eyes and straight nose characteristic of the Walker family lineage, features shared by my husband Matthew and his father, showing the strength of their bloodline. Lily and Amy are truly close as cousins. Despite their 2-year age difference, they play together almost every holiday. I often see Amy watching with sparkling eyes as Lily practices piano. Sometimes they even attempt piano duets together, which is heartwarming to watch. Our two families maintain a very close relationship. Sunday family dinners have become an indispensable tradition, alternating between our homes. We enjoy my traditional roast chicken along with wine that Samantha brings. Such peaceful times have continued for these past few years. We frequently see each other at children's school events and lessons too. The Samantha family comes to support Amy's school performances, and we always attend Lily's piano recitals. Being able to share in each other's children's growth as if they were our own, that was our pride. In the Greenwich community, we're known as an ideal family. We always participate as a family in holiday barbecues and church gatherings. We often hear neighbors say, "What a wonderful family you are." On weekends, our spacious living room fills with family laughter. Matthew cheerfully shares stories about work, while Amy reports on her day at school. Sometimes Stephen joins us, coming home early for a change, as the aroma of Samantha's homemade apple pie wafts through the air. Lily's piano music became the soundtrack to our lives. Yes, everything should have been perfect. At least, that's what I thought. I noticed a change in early October, as autumn was beginning to make its presence felt. It was around the time when Greenwich's street trees started changing color, and library visitors began wearing light coats. At first, it was just a subtle sense that something was off. Matthew, who usually came home by 7 o'clock, started coming home later and later, making excuses like, "The current project is entering a crucial phase." Sometimes it would be past 10 o'clock. The time we spent sharing warm family dinners gradually decreased. Sorry, I'll be late again tonight. Short messages like this became more frequent. Even when I waited for a reply, sometimes he wouldn't even read them. The casual living room conversations we used to have after he came home had somehow diminished. There were other changes too. Matthew suddenly changed his smartphone password. Though he explained it as company security policy, something felt off about his explanation. Since then, he started keeping his phone close at all times, even placing it within reach on the bathroom counter while showering. What particularly concerned me was the sudden increase in phone calls with his sister Samantha. What used to be once or twice weekly contact became almost daily. When taking calls, he would shut himself in his study and speak in hushed tones. When I asked if they were discussing family matters, he would give vague answers like, just some coordination. Amy sensitively picked up on these changes in her father. Weekend park walks were increasingly met with excuses like, I need to review work documents today, and a lonely shadow began appearing in our daughter's eyes. Dad, are you busy with work lately? One night, when Amy asked Matthew this, he showed clear signs of distress. That's right, he answered with a trembling voice, which I didn't miss. As late October approached, Matthew's suspicious behavior became even more noticeable. I increasingly noticed the study light leaking out late at night. When I peeked in, I would find him desperately researching something on his computer. The way he hurriedly closed the screen gave me an eerie feeling of wrongness. His frequent checking of family albums also concerned me. He started repeatedly looking at Amy's childhood photos in particular. Photos from right after her birth, when she first walked, her kindergarten entrance ceremony. He would stare at each photo as if trying to verify something. One day, while organizing the study drawer, I accidentally came across a bundle of hospital-related documents. Papers with the letterhead of Greenwich Hospital, where Samantha's husband Stephen worked, were neatly stacked. Mixed in were specialized materials about genetic testing and blood types, making my heart pound heavily. Conversations between us as a couple had clearly decreased too. Even during meals, Matthew was absorbed in checking his smartphone, barely listening to Amy's or my conversations. Even when I asked, "Are you listening?" he would just give vague responses like, yes. He seemed to deliberately avoid times when we could be alone together. The warm atmosphere had disappeared from our Sunday family dinners too. I caught Matthew and Samantha exchanging meaningful glances several times. Stephen was still caught up in work as usual and didn't seem to notice the tension, but Lily appeared to sense something. Even Lily's usually light piano tones felt heavy these days. Though Amy seemed to find support in time spent with her cousin, she started asking more frequently for, "Dad, give me a goodnight kiss," before bed. Each time, Matthew would show an expression filled with guilt. What did these changes mean for our lives? Doubts began swirling in my mind. Cracks were definitely starting to appear in what I had thought was a perfect daily life. I started getting lost in thought even during work at the library. Storytime with children, which used to be my greatest joy, now sometimes left me stumbling over words. Colleagues increasingly worried, asking, "Caitlin, are you okay?" At home, the family photos on the living room walls seemed to stare at me. Our wedding day photo, the photo right after Amy's birth, last year's Christmas party group photo. Everyone looked so happy, smiling. But now, I can't shake the feeling that something is hidden beneath those smiles. What particularly concerned me was how Matthew suddenly started paying attention to his health. He began going to the gym he'd never shown interest in before and even started dieting. Though he said, "I need to start taking care of myself at my age," there seemed to be some sense of urgency in his manner. I also overheard him consulting with his sister Samantha about health management over the phone. The other day, Amy suddenly asked when she came home from school, "Dad, have you always had blue eyes?" Come to think of it, Matthew had recently started studying Amy's eye color more intently. I answered, "Yes, he inherited the same blue eyes as your grandmother," but my daughter's innocent question oddly stuck with me. I can't forget the words Matthew started muttering sometimes in the living room after Amy had gone to bed, "Blood will tell." At first I thought it was just work stress venting, but the way he looked at family photos each time only increased my anxiety. As November began, Greenwich quickly transformed into its winter appearance. Mornings echoed with the sound of sweeping leaves, frost began appearing in the garden visible from the window, and the street trees had completely shed their leaves. But the anxiety in my heart only continued to grow, like spring snow melting. Matthew's behavior became even stranger. Now he suddenly started showing an abnormal interest in Amy. During breakfast, he would stare at her face, observing her hair color and eye shape as if checking something. "Amy, you've grown so much lately," he would say in an almost probing tone. He also suddenly increased how often he took photos of Amy. Each time he pointed his smartphone at her, our daughter would show a slightly puzzled expression. Even when she asked, "Dad, another photo?" he would answer with an almost desperate manner, "I want to keep it as a memento." Interaction with the Samantha family became even more frequent. In addition to weekend family dinners, Matthew started dropping by on weekday evenings too. Leaving with words like, "I have important things to discuss with my sister," it wasn't uncommon to see them talking alone for long periods. Mid-November brought Lily's piano recital. Greenwich Community Center's hall was filled with local dignitaries. The deep resonance of Lily's Moonlight Sonata captivated the entire venue. The audience gave generous applause for her expressiveness and technique, remarkable for a 10-year-old. I still vividly remember Matthew's behavior then. His gaze toward his niece Lily, rather than his daughter Amy, was intensely passionate. As expected of someone with Walker family blood, he muttered to himself with a somewhat proud tone. His strange behavior continued at the post-recital reception. Among the relatives gathered around Lily, he stood with his sister Samantha, beaming. His expression was like a parent rejoicing in their own child's success. Meanwhile, Amy quietly watched her cousin's success from a distance. "Lily, that was truly wonderful. Looking forward to your future." With each word of praise thrown their way, Matthew and Samantha would exchange glances, sharing what seemed like secret smiles. Stephen, still caught up in work, arrived late to the reception. He showed no particular concern about his wife and brother-in-law's intimate conversation. But I could tell the abnormality of this atmosphere. It felt like someone was maintaining a big lie, creating a heavy atmosphere that enveloped the entire venue. As December began, preparations started for the annual Christmas party. This is a big family gathering traditionally held at our mansion. Relatives from across the East Coast gather to celebrate the year's end. This year, there was an unusual tension from the preparation stage. Matthew declared, "I want to make this year's party special," and started getting involved in preparations he usually left entirely to me. He checked the guest list multiple times and even hinted at having an important announcement. Those words filled my chest with a constricting feeling. Even while decorating the large Christmas tree, there was a different air than usual. While Amy and Lily were attaching ornaments together, Matthew and Samantha were having serious discussions about something. Every time their gazes fell on Lily, my anxiety increased. As party preparations reached their peak, the tension in the house increased day by day. What should have been an eagerly anticipated family gathering felt like everyone was afraid of something. Matthew in particular never let his mobile phone out of sight, frequently exchanging messages with Samantha. One night, fragments of their argument overheard from the study seemed like the key to solving all the mysteries. Matthew's voice saying, "We can't keep hiding this any longer." Samantha's voice pleading, "But think about the children." I was beginning to sense what their conversation meant. 1 week until the Christmas party. This annual gathering might significantly change our lives this year. Such a premonition enveloped the house like a heavy air. Christmas Eve morning brought soft light streaming through the crystal-clear winter sky. Though we should have been looking forward to this day as usual, this year only brought mounting anxiety. Many presents were already piled under the large Christmas tree, and the living room was filled with the scent of cinnamon and orange. After 3 p.m., relatives started gathering one after another. An uncle and aunt from Boston, cousins living in New York, relatives even came from as far as Chicago, making it a large gathering of over 30 people. The women were dressed in holiday-appropriate elegant dresses, and the men in proper suits. Cheerful laughter increasingly echoed through the mansion. The Samantha family arrived earlier than usual. Lily, dressed in a brand new velvet dress, was carefully checking the piano tuning before the start. Meanwhile, Matthew was more restless than usual, repeatedly checking his mobile phone and going back and forth between the study and reception room. "Dad, are you nervous?" When Amy asked her father, Matthew showed an expression as if frozen for a moment. "Ah, a little," he answered with a slightly trembling voice. At 5 p.m., the party began as scheduled with Lily's piano performance. Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker further enhanced the Christmas atmosphere. The gathered relatives gave generous applause for her skillful performance, remarkable for a 10-year-old. As expected of Lily, truly wonderful. "She's the pride of our family." Amidst the flying words of praise, I didn't miss how Matthew and Samantha's expressions stiffened for a moment. They kept exchanging glances and showing signs of checking the time. Next, dinner began in the main dining room. A long table was set with colorful dishes centered around roast turkey. Champagne in glasses reflected light and sparkled, while the fireplace cast warm light throughout the room. At first glance, everything looked like a perfect family gathering. However, as a veteran librarian, I could tell. With eyes that don't miss even the finest cracks in book spines, I could clearly sense the abnormal tension in the air. Matthew barely ate during dinner. Samantha similarly just poked at her food with her fork. Their behavior was clearly odd. Amy and Lily were enjoying themselves at the children's table with other cousins. Their occasional laughter felt like the only relief in this heavy atmosphere. It happened suddenly around the time the Christmas pudding was being served. Matthew abruptly stood up and lightly clinked his glass. "Everyone, may I have your attention for a moment?" Room conversation gradually quieted as all eyes focused on him. Samantha's face turned pale for a moment, and my heart started beating violently. "I have important news for everyone today." Matthew pulled out a piece of paper from his inner pocket with trembling hands. Though his eyes were red, he continued speaking while trying to maintain a dignified attitude. "For these past few months, I've been facing a certain fact. And now, I believe it's time to reveal the truth before this family." The sound of unfolding paper echoed through the silent room. Amy watched her father with a puzzled expression from the children's table. "Please look at these DNA test results." "Amy." Matthew's voice caught for a moment. "Amy is not my child." At that moment, the room's atmosphere seemed to freeze. Everyone held their breath, lost for words. Hands holding glasses stopped, and the sound of forks ceased. Amid this, the sound of a small chair creaking was heard. Amy had slowly stood up. Amy pointed straight at Lily and said in a clear voice through the tension-filled space of adults, "Did you test Lily's DNA too?" With that one line, the room's atmosphere changed completely. The paper slipped from Matthew's hands, and Samantha let out a small scream. Stephen looked at his wife with a confused expression, and murmurs spread among the other relatives. And I quietly smiled. My daughter's wise words were about to open the door to a truth that had been hidden for 10 years. Right after Amy's words broke the heavy silence, I slowly stood up. Placing the napkin I had been holding with trembling hands quietly on the table, I straightened my back and looked at my husband. The Christmas tree lights flickered along with the fireplace flames. "We knew everything." My voice was calmer than I expected. With hands that had handled thousands of books at the library, I took out an envelope from my bag. The edge of the white envelope was slightly worn from being checked many times. "These are the real DNA test results. Matthew, the ones you have are fake, aren't they? The results from the Boston lab, Greenwich General Hospital records, and 10 years of your email exchanges. They're all here." I could see the color draining from my husband's face. Samantha let out a small cry and covered her face with both hands. Stephen still didn't seem to fully grasp the situation. I had known the whole truth for a month. When my husband's behavior started becoming strange, my maternal instinct kicked in. With over 20 years of library experience, I had developed an eye for noticing subtle changes in people. After much deliberation, I decided to hire a reputable detective agency in New York. The facts revealed by that investigation would turn our lives upside down. I still vividly remember the day I received the first report from the detective, crying alone in the reading room after the library had closed. Matthew and Samantha's affair had begun in the summer of 2014, 10 years ago. While Stephen was away on a 3-month medical conference in Chicago, their relationship rapidly developed. The two siblings fell into a forbidden relationship. As a result of that relationship, Samantha became pregnant. Initially, they considered abortion. However, Matthew's strong desire not to give up his own child, combined with Samantha's wish to have this baby, led them to ultimately decide on cuckolding. Looking at the medical records from that time, Stephen had accepted Lily as his own child without any doubt. His love as a father after her birth was genuine, with evidence showing he tried to make time for his daughter whenever possible between his busy work schedule. "Stephen," I called out gently. "Haven't you noticed how much Lily looks like Matthew? Actually, she has the Walker family's genetic traits. Those characteristic blue eyes, that straight nose. And that piano talent is actually a trait passed down through Matthew's maternal lineage." Stephen froze as if struck by lightning. The weight of his wife and best friend's 10-year betrayal, and above all, the fact that his beloved daughter was actually. These revelations hit him all at once. Large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his hands wouldn't stop trembling. Still, his eyes held unchanged love when looking at Lily. Samantha collapsed into her chair. Her perfectly applied makeup began to run with her tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," she began her tearful confession. "Last month, when a blood type discrepancy was found during Lily's regular checkup, Matthew and I were panicking, knowing everything would soon come to light. Matthew tried to get through this by denying his parental relationship with Amy. I'm truly sorry." While listening to this confession, I thought back to the events of a month ago. After receiving the detective's report and getting confirmation through DNA testing, the most difficult part was explaining the situation to Amy. "Hey, Amy," one night, I gently spoke while holding my daughter on my lap. "Mommy has something important to tell you about Daddy. It might be a bit difficult to understand, but I believe you can handle it." Amy understood the situation with surprising calmness. Rather, she even showed pure joy, asking, "So Lily and I are real sisters?" Then she said, "If Daddy is trying to do something bad, we need to stop him, right?" At those words, I couldn't help but hug my daughter tightly. Together, we made plans for this party. We had already predicted that Matthew would present fake DNA test results. Amy's wise words were the culmination of that plan. Matthew now leaned against the wall, looking defeated. His plan to divorce me in pursuit of a new life with his sister and even deny his relationship with his real daughter had crumbled helplessly. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his usually perfectly styled hair was disheveled. Meanwhile, Lily quietly stood up and walked over to Stephen. Each of her steps echoed through the room. "Dad, you are my real dad. Regardless of genetics, you're the beloved father who raised me for 10 years. You will always be my dad." At those words, Stephen choked up and held his daughter tightly. A warm atmosphere spread around them. There was a parent-child bond there far stronger than any biological fact. Lily's decision deeply affected all of us. She clearly rejected a relationship with Matthew, her biological father, choosing instead Stephen, who had loved and raised her for 10 years. Her choice proved the existence of a genuine parent-child bond that transcended blood ties. The party naturally came to an end there. Relatives departed quietly, each harboring their own thoughts. The next day, many phone calls and messages arrived. It was a great comfort to us that most contained words of understanding and support rather than criticism or condemnation. A few days later, Stephen initiated divorce proceedings. He determined that his relationship with Samantha was beyond repair. However, his love for Lily never changed one bit. If anything, he began expressing it more strongly, saying, you'll always be my precious daughter. I also decided to divorce Matthew. The 10-year betrayal and his attempt to deny even his bond with his real daughter were unforgivable. Divorce proceedings would begin early in the new year. Amy gripped my hand firmly, saying, "Mom, let's do our best together." The warmth of that small hand gave me the courage to look forward. I resolved to build a new life while continuing my library work. Most comforting was the relationship between Amy and Lily. As blood sisters, they became bound by an even stronger bond than before. They could always be seen together at school and their various activities. The sight of Amy reading while listening to Lily's piano practice warms my heart. The community's support was also reassuring. My library colleagues, school teachers, and neighbors supported us in various ways. I was especially grateful for their consideration toward the children, from arranging counseling to providing subtle care in daily life. We experienced the kindness of many people. By the time we welcomed the new year, our lives had begun to regain some stability. Amy and I moved into a small apartment near the library and started our new life. My daughter still loves books, and we spend weekends at the library together. Sometimes Lily joins us, and we hold reading sessions together. Truth can sometimes be cruel, but it can also bring new beginnings. Now, the mother-daughter bond between Amy and me is stronger than ever. And through this experience, we learned that there are things more important than blood ties. As I organize books in the soft light streaming through the library windows today, I think, life, like a story, can sometimes take unexpected turns. But I feel truly blessed to be able to weave each page together with the people I cherish. Just like carefully aligning each book's spine on the shelf, we will walk forward into our new life, one step at a time, steadily and surely.